Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Sports Talk. Of course, that is the podcast and talk show of Midnight Sports Today. Today, we're going to be doing the quarterback episode. Our good friend Bill Carroll will be joining us later. But first, we have two very special guests, repeat guests of the show. First off is Greg Rector. His Twitter is at Greg Cowboys, GregCowboys. Of course, spelling attacks me while I'm trying to speak. He is a podcaster with his podcast being called Greg's Gripes. He is a writer for Nuts and Bolts Sports, and his section is the Cowboys Corner. He is our resident Cowboy fan, so obviously, of course, the resident person we like to talk trash to because of his fandom. However, he is also a veteran of the armed forces, and of course, we all know when it comes to football and the military, Pat Tillman is the figurehead whenever the NFL does their Memorial Day service. However, Greg wants to recognize the other NFL veterans or NFL players who went on to serve their country. Welcome to the show, Greg Rector. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brooke. The NFL players that I will also have in an article tomorrow at nutsandboltsports.com for Memorial Day were Vietnam veterans who passed away in that particular conflict. But coming into the world of college, of course, anybody who's an Iowa Hawkeye fan knows Neil Kinnock's story, but a lot of other people may not. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1939. Great, tremendous running back for the Hawkeyes. He did it all basically to win the Heisman on a not great Iowa Hawkeyes team, but Neil Kinnock for one, and then another that college people, college sports fans would be familiar with is Hobie Baker, who led Princeton to 3 NCAA hockey championships way back when. And he's the person that the Hobie Baker Award is named after, and he died in service in World War I.
I said, absolutely looking very forward to reading it. It's going to drop tomorrow, and the link for it will be posted on my Twitter once it drops. Also, just to add to Niall Kinnock's story, I hope I pronounced his first name right. His namesake is what is Iowa has named the stadium after.
In 1972, they named the stadium after him.
Yes, absolutely. So his legacy continues to live on till today. Looking forward to the article. And we're looking forward to more insights about quarterbacks coming up soon. Gonna throw it to Jackson Danner. Of course, Jackson first joined our podcast when we talked about the NFL draft coming up, the prospects and who we think each team should have picked. You guys should check that episode out. And Jackson had a lot of great insight, and he really is a big fan of Sam Howell, something that we're going to get into in this show. However, he is a very knowledgeable voice. He is obviously a football analyst and podcaster, the co-host of the HBCU Pigskin Show, and of course his main podcast, he is a co-host of Hardware Podcast. Some of you who've been following my work with University of Hawaii football, I've spoken with his other co-host, Omar, on multiple occasions on his show. So it's been a great opportunity to have these relationships between Jackson, myself, and Omar. However, today we're focusing straight on the quarterbacks. Welcome to the show, Jackson Danner. How you doing, Jackson?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on, Brock. Man, we know a lot more than we did back when we did that mock draft podcast and kind of analysts. So, man, looking forward, we know the answers to the problems that we were trying to solve in that, and now we can look forward to this season and kind of what problems that these young quarterbacks especially can solve. So, man, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not only going to be talking about the rookie quarterbacks, although fair amount of our show will be focused on them. We're going to talk about just the NFL quarterbacks in general, and we will be talking about the 2023 prospective class for quarterbacks and just college football quarterbacks in general. Of course, we're going to kick it off with the current quarterbacks in the NFL. First question I have for both of you: who is the best quarterbacks for each division? I'm going to kick it off with you, Jackson, but before I start, I think unless there's any type of disagreement between you, me or Greg, I think we can all agree that Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the AFC East and Tom Brady is the best quarterback in the NFC South. Any disagreements on that? You can shake your head if no disagreements. Yeah, that's pretty given. Pretty much given. Of course, lots to see, of course, with the Jets equipping Zach Wilson with a plethora of weapons, both on the offensive and also the defensive side of the ball. Miami bringing in Tyreek Hill to join speeds the Jalen Waddle in Miami. And of course, New England, but Mac Jones, they did lose Josh McDaniels as their OC. They haven't really named an OC up to this point. It seems Bill Belichick is kind of the offense coordinator. We don't know exactly how that's going to go, so should be interesting to see. But of course, Josh Allen is king in the AFC East.
Just remind you that when McDaniel went to Denver, Mr. Belichick did the job, and they did bring a Super Bowl home.
True. So, but at the same time, that was also with a gentleman by the name of Tom Brady. So we'll see how Mac Jones does in his sophomore season. Talking about Tom Brady, obviously he's the king of the NFC South right now. New Orleans looks like they will be starting Jameis Winston. Atlanta will be starting Marcus Mariota, even though they did draft Desmond Ridder. And of course, Carolina, we don't know. Sam Darnold is the incumbent. They did draft Matt Corral. And there are rumors that are picking up steam that Cam Newton will be signed back to the Carolina Panthers. I'm not too sure what's going to happen. We will have to see. But it's pretty clear Tom Brady is number one in the NFC South. Kicking it back, let's start with the AFC West, the division that is gathering the most amount of attention right now. Kick it to you first, Jackson. Who is your favorite quarterback or your best quarterback in that division?
This is probably my hottest take out of any division. And first, I want to say this is not a knock on. First of all, this division is loaded when Derek Carr isn't even considered for this, I think, by any of us, and he probably would have been the front runner for two other divisions. So I'm going to say Justin Herbert. And now that is not a knock on Mahomes or Russ. If either of you said Mahomes is the best player in the NFL, I wouldn't bat an eye because he'd be in that conversation for me too. But just how precise Herbert is, how he's done only a little bit less than Mahomes with a lot less to work with, going over with two different coaching staffs, not having Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce on his squad, all that. I'm just going to say Herbert. We'll see eventually down the road, right? I'm probably wrong, but gosh, Herbert is such an incredible passer, and he's such a good leader when that was probably his main knock coming out of Oregon. And man, I'm obsessed with Herbert. I'm obsessed with the Chargers. Really love what they're building in LA. And Staley is, man, such a good coach. They've really found that ingredient just to go together with Herbert. So not a knock on Mahomes at all, and of course not a knock on Russ. But man, I'm gonna say.
All right, I'm gonna kick it to you, Greg. Who do you think for the AFC West?
We're in agreement, Mr. Herbert.
All right, you want to jump on anything else, or you basically agree with everything Jackson said?
Well, it's the tools that he has. He just hasn't had the same type of weaponry around him. Yes, Keenan and Williams are good receivers, but they've added to that now. Josh Palmer, Canadian, by the way, he's going to get used more as well this year. You look at what they added in their backfield and on their line this year. I really think that Herbert is going to surpass Mahomes in the eyes of many this year as the best quarterback in the AFC West.
Yeah, and I think for the first time in any discussion I've ever had, I'm in agreement with everyone in the room. I would say this as a Chargers fan, so I do have a little bit of bias with it. And this is not a knock against Patrick Mahomes at all. It's actually a knock against everybody around him and also the Kansas City front office. The reason why I see Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in the AFC West right now is because for the first time in his entire career, probably since high school, he has the one element he hasn't had, or that other quarterbacks have had that he hasn't had, which is consistency. This is the first time he's going to have an offensive coordinator for the second year in about 6 years. So again, since high school, you gotta think about along with the fact that in college he had a plethora of receivers to go to, but those are always changing out, whether they were transferred, graduated, so on and so forth. He has this will be a third year playing with both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in the receiver spot. His second year playing with Josh Palmer, Canadian, out of the University of Tennessee, who was a very surprise. He's surprising to me when he came onto the Chargers. He has very sure hands, so he can catch those rocket balls from Justin Herbert. I really like his vertical. And he was a very underrated wide receiver in college because he went to the University of Tennessee. I do believe had he played under Josh Heupel's system, maybe give it 2 or 3 years, he would have been a first-round wide receiver. He was just hurt by the lack of success Tennessee had during his time there. Yeah, the backfield, obviously, Austin Eckler, who's more of a threat, honestly, in the pass game than he is in the run game, even though he's a threat in the run game as well. I believe he's had both a 1,000-yard rushing season and a 1,000-yard receiving season. Not in the same season, but different ones, right? And also, Isaiah Spiller, he didn't really impress, per se, at the Texas A&M Pro Day, but no Aggie did. That just probably a fault of the university or whoever was set that up in general. However, he doesn't have game-changing speed, but he doesn't need to when you talk about the running back position because he has great vision and great abilities to make the proper cuts necessary to explode. Alongside the fact that the Chargers also drafted Zion Johnson in the first round, guard out of Boston College, to go with Rashawn Slater, Corey Linsley, and Matt Filer on a very impressive offensive line. Only question mark remains is the right tackle position. They also drafted Jamari Sayer, the left tackle out of Georgia, who's probably going to move to guard. I mean, everyone was showing the highlights of him absolutely pancaking Aiden Hutchinson in the Orange Bowl, so as to show the kind of talent that he has. When it comes to Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, are revolutionizing how they run their offense. Of course, before they was team speed and spreading out the field both vertically and horizontally, and then Travis Kelce kind of find the gaps in between as the main target. Now I think they're going to go back to more of a power run game. That's the reason why they brought in Ronald Jones. I think they realized that Orlando Brown Jr. is a much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. So they really want to emphasize that. And the knock against Mahomes for me is the fact that he hasn't played without Tyreek Hill in his entire NFL career. I mean, Tyreek Hill not only has game-changing speed, he has game-changing route running, great cuts, and he can just make the contested catch, and also he can make the proper cuts necessary with the ball in his hands to take a 40-yard gain into a touchdown, essentially. So it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts with MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster. Until I can see that product on the field, I'm going with the guy that has the weapons he used last year, so Justin Herbert. I know that was a mouthful for everyone, but that division I think needed to be talked about the most, especially when you consider Derek Carr and Russell Wilson. The gap between them and Mahomes and Herbert is not much in terms of talent and also talent around them. Obviously, the Raiders got Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, and they still have Josh Jacobs on their roster. And then obviously Denver has a great receiver room: Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Garrett Bowles at left tackle, and then obviously Javonte Williams as RB1. So very, very interesting division to watch this next coming season. Let's go to a division that there's a lot of question marks in, and that's the AFC South. So I'm going to kick it to you, Greg. Who is your favorite quarterback in the AFC South?
Well, it's the newest member of the AFC South quarterback club, and that will be Matt Ryan, formerly of the Falcons. Obviously, with the other quarterbacks in that division, I'm not putting Tannehill above Matt Ryan. I'm not going to put Trevor Lawrence or Davis Mills anywhere near the category of Ryan either. So as of right now, it would be Matt Ryan.
I'm going to agree with you. Matt Ryan has been very in his post Super Bowl career. He has been a very underrated quarterback. Yes, he has had some bonehead decisions and some throws where Julio Jones had to turn from receiver to safety in order to prevent an interception. But for the most part, he's a fairly consistent quarterback. And Atlanta won more games than they should have last season, only through the work of Matt Ryan and Cordell Patterson. Obviously, Ryan is coming to a very good situation in terms of Jonathan Taylor is coming off a season where he was arguably the best running back in the NFL. He has a fantastic offensive line in front of him, and he has some weapons at the receiver position, obviously, Zach Pascal, Michael Pittman, guys like that. Also, when you look at the defensive side of the ball, great D-line, and the signing of Stephon Gilmore is going to give them another opportunity to be on the field more often. So Matt Ryan is the choice for me. Nothing against Ryan Tannehill, and nothing against Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence will take a step up under the tutelage of Doug Peterson, but Tannehill showed me who he was in the playoffs, and that's all I have to say about it. Jackson, who are you taking for the AFC South?
I'm actually going to go with Trevor Lawrence as my best quarterback in the AFC South. I saw this stat to shout out to Connor McQuiston of PFF, who's a friend of Hardware. He posted this stat the other day where Trevor Lawrence, when leading or tied, only had a 2.1% turnover worthy play rate, which is tied with Aaron Rodgers for seventh lowest. The problem is that he was hardly ever in the lead. His best running back was in t-shirt and shorts, and his second best was benched. So he really did not walk into it. I mean, this is like probably the worst season in NFL history on the coaching staff wise, right? Just abuse. The whole thing was terrible. It was a disaster. So he walked into quite literally the worst possible scenario you could have. And yet he made something worthy of it that you can reflect back on. He's got a first round pick coming back this year, obviously in ETN. He's got a Super Bowl winning head coach on his side. Man, I'm excited to see what Trevor Lawrence does. And but I'm gonna go with him. I love Matt Ryan. I like Ryan Tannehill. And Davis Mills had a better rookie season than any other quarterback. But no offense to any of them, I'm just gonna go with Trevor.
Yeah, and that's not an insane pick to make when you consider everything you just said in terms of the running back position. And they have a very underrated weapon, Laviska Shenault, on offense as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think everyone's been caught up by the Jags offseason decisions in terms of giving Christian Kirk that huge extension that really messed up the market. Yeah. I don't know. And obviously getting Trayvon Walker, number one, taking two linebackers in the draft as well, Devin Lloyd in the first, and also getting Chad Muma later on, which I like those players, but those moves made some question marks. However, they do have Cam Robinson. Walker Little is going to be in his second season. So there is a lot going for Lawrence if he can put together. And obviously Doug Peterson has shown that he can work with a young quarterback before. I know some people say that the success of Carson Wentz was due to Frank Reich. I don't think Doug Peterson was just standing on the sidelines when that happened as well, considering he was a former NFL quarterback. So very, very interesting stuff to see. Moving to the AFC North. Now, this pick is going to garner some controversy. One, because his last season was arguably his worst. And also he's in a division that has the AFC champion in the Cincinnati Bengals. They just signed Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns did, to a $220 million guaranteed contract. And then the Steelers are the Steelers. But my favorite quarterback and my best quarterback is Lamar Jackson. He hasn't done anything to make me believe that he's not the best quarterback in the division. Every season that he's played healthy, the Ravens have made the playoffs. He's a two-time division winner. He didn't win a playoff game till his third season. Peyton Manning didn't win until like his seventh or the eighth. So I don't think that's something that should be held against him. He has made when he first came in there his rookie season, Baltimore was a mess. I think the number one wide receiver was like Michael Crabtree, and the second was like John Brown. So, just to kind of give you an idea of the weapons that he has had. Of course, Mark Andrews has stepped up, but his second best threat was half on the field Rashawn Bateman or Hollywood Brown, who's now with the Cardinals. I think that so obviously he hasn't signed a contract and he's not represented. So people are thinking that he might leave Baltimore or he just doesn't know what he's doing. I disagree. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. And instead of signing now, if he can go out there and even have an above average season, he's going to make north of $230 million, either in Baltimore or in the free market. And we haven't seen a quarterback of his caliber hit the free market. And I can't even remember the last time that occurred. So if he can get a bidding war for him, I think that's why he's held off on signing a contract. That's all besides the point. A lot of people say that he's not a good passer. I disagree. I think he's a decent passer, but one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. I also believe that his ability to make throws at a variety of different angles gives him the edge over Watson and Burrow. And lastly, his game-changing speed. There's no substitute for that. And when a defense has to change their entire philosophy just for you, I can't play anybody else above you. With all that being said, Jackson, who's your best quarterback in the AFC North?
This is probably the toughest division out of anyone because I'm gonna go with Joe Burrow as mine. And how can I not pick Lamar Jackson when he had more yards than 18 teams last year? So it's like, man, this is really hard. And I was also one of those guys that early on with all this Deshaun Watson stuff, I was saying when he's playing, he's a top 5 quarterback. So like, this is like a really, really tough division. I'm going to go with Burrow for a lot of the same reasons I'm going to go with Herbert. Just how much he did with how little he had to work with, the confidence and the leadership he exudes, how he's growing alongside his head coach, and that they're both so young, both in age and in their careers. I'm gonna go with Burrow, but man, like Lamar, people forget Lamar Jackson is younger than Joe Burrow, so like Lamar is still he's still on the learning curve, and it's not a knock at him. Oh, he hasn't made a championship game or anything like that. That's not a knock on him at all. It's just like, man, all of these guys are so good, and we'll see about how Pickett and Trubisky, how that battle turns out. I'm gonna go with Burrow, but I don't know, if you had asked me yesterday, maybe I would have said Lamar Jackson. Like I don't know, I could picture either of these guys on any day.
And that's not a crazy thing to say, especially when you consider what Burrow did last season. Obviously, the playoffs, but first the regular season. He has a for sure top 10 wide receiver. He has arguably another wide receiver in the top 20, and possibly 3 wide receivers in the top 30. They also added Alex Cappa, guard from Tampa Bay, right tackle in Lyle Collins, who I'm sure Greg knows very well as he came from the Cowboys. And he's still the top 5 running back in Joe Mixon, who can both run and can be in the pass game as well. I'm not sure Samaje Perine is on the team, but he was very nice at points last year as well. So a lot of great things are going on for the Bengals. Kicking it to you, Greg, who is your favorite quarterback or your best quarterback in the AFC North?
Well, this is the only division where there isn't one. There's 2 of them, and you guys named them, Burrow and Jackson. I can't separate it. It's just that close. There's nothing to differentiate one being better than the other at all. Burrow brings what he brings to the game. Jackson brings what he brings to the game. You look at their age. You look at what's around them. Obviously, Baltimore last year, it was health that just destroyed them, plain and simple. They were the injury kings last year in the league, right? So to me, in this division, it's those 2 guys, Burrow and Jackson. I'm sorry. Everybody can be as hyped up as you want about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's not a damn winner. He has not been a winner. Bottom line, he has the talent. He does what he does individually. Now let's see what he does in a different change of scenery, and all that other sort of stuff. But he hasn't proven to me that Deshaun Watson is a quarterback that will take you somewhere.
That's a very controversial statement. I'm going to give some points why and why not. And first of all, you're correct, because of the fact that I believe he only has 1 playoff win in his entire career. I believe he's been like 5, 6 seasons at this point. And his only playoff win, the Texans showed up very poor against the Buffalo Bills, and arguably had in the beginning of the second half, when the Texans received the kickoff and instead of taking the knee, the return just threw it into the end zone. Had that been called a touchdown for Buffalo, that probably would have been game over at that point. The reverse argument to that is that Deshaun Watson won a national championship against Alabama with Clemson. He also...
We're not talking about the college game. We're talking about in the NFL. And in the NFL, what you did for Clemson doesn't matter, right? We're talking NFL quarterbacks only. As an NFL quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and don't get me wrong, he has talent. But Deshaun Watson did not raise the level of everybody around him, and that's what the best quarterbacks do. The best quarterbacks bring that talent level up with the players around them. Bottom line.
Greg, you're definitely not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. I will say the Texans are also not a winning team, and Bill O'Brien is now a college offensive coordinator who was the head coach at the time.
This goes to the thing that I always talk about when we do the draft shows and all that other sort of stuff. And guys want to rip apart draft picks, etc. Wait a second. these horrible organizations drafted you because they were so horrible to begin with. You don't have the talent level around you that other franchises have, etc. I mean, look, if you go back just 1 year, Mac Jones landed in heaven as far as the quarterback goes because he is a perfect fit for what that team does. Bottom line, right? Trevor Lawrence was never going to have a winning season in Jacksonville. So those things I take into account. But you must raise the level of those around you. That's when you become a quarterback that people look up to and all that other thing. Yeah, sure, he scrambles, he gets his own yards and all that other stuff. Yeah, he can make the throws. But did he raise the level of them? No, he didn't raise the level.
And that is definitely going to be a point that divides a lot of people, considering the fact that, one, obviously we said all the things that he hasn't accomplished. Two, before he got injured, he was on pace to become the offensive rookie of the year his first year in the league, and he was responsible for this comeback against Buffalo with some very incredible plays. However, he could not seal the deal against Kansas City, and of course, once DeAndre Hopkins left, it was downhill ever since. He gets a new start in Cleveland. A team that has a very impressive defense in terms of just names on paper. We got to see how that's going to translate, because there were some games last year where that defense did not come to play. In LA is my biggest example, when Justin Herbert dropped over 45 or something like that points on them. That's beside the point. Of course, we know Cleveland just signed tight end David Njoku to a brand new 4-year, $58 million extension, an eyebrow-raising contract, to say the least. So very, very interesting things to see when it comes to both Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Of course, as we said, Josh Allen, AFC East, without a doubt. Moving to the NFC, let's go to the division with the Super Bowl champions, the NFC West. Of course, there's Drew Lock in Seattle, or Geno Smith. Who knows who's going to win out? Of course, Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford, LA and Arizona, and then whoever San Fran seems to go with. It sounds like Lance, but they haven't traded Garoppolo, and at the same time, Garoppolo just came off an NFC Championship appearance. Who knows where they're going to go, but it doesn't matter for me. I'm going with the Super Bowl champion, Matt Stafford, as my number one quarterback. Just the sheer fact that he can do whatever Sean McVay needs him to do, and the best availability is availability, something Kyler Murray has yet to show us that he can do for a whole season. He can put the ball in the money to Cooper Kupp whenever he needs to whatever other weapons are around him. He has Allen Robinson now, who was mentally checked out of Chicago. I don't think his physical abilities deteriorated at all. I think he's going to have a very nice season this year in LA. And again, he won the Super Bowl. And there's nothing that Murray does in terms of his physical attributes, even though he does make incredible plays in terms of his big arm and his ability to run, and also the fact that he has that lower body power to be able to slow down, stop on a dime, make those changes in direction, things like that. It's cool and all. He hasn't won anything to a point where I can say, yeah, he's that dude. And the fact that when it comes to the second half of the season, the wear and tear just gets to him. And when he, kind of like with Deshaun Watson, when DeAndre Hopkins is on the field, he's a different animal. When he's not on there, we don't know what we get sometimes. So with that being said, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Greg. Who are you taking for the best quarterback in the NFC West?
So close.
Yeah, pretty easy. Jackson, what about you? Who are you taking?
I'm gonna go with Matthew Stafford. And I don't really think it's fair if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't at least get a mention on here, because injury prone doesn't necessarily mean not tough. In fact, it usually means the opposite. So yes, he's had a lot of injuries, but not many people have accomplished what he has. And I think he at least deserves to be in the conversation. I do have to give it to Matthew Stafford though. I think a lot of people always thought that Stafford was really good, just kind of, wasted away in Detroit a little bit. I mean, that was really confirmed, like if it was that easy to win, like people say, oh, well, anyone would have won it with that team. Jared Goff had a shot, and Jared Goff is a top, like it or not, he's a top 32 quarterback, and he couldn't get it done. So Matthew Stafford is, I think, on the bottom half, but on the elite part of on the elite level of quarterbacks. And
Catherine just proves what I said earlier about it really does matter who drafts you. It really does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as soon as you knew that year that the Lions were going to take him, and it's just like, are you kidding? This poor guy. This poor guy is walking into the absolute abyss. And how long did
Yeah.
he stay? 13 seasons there. I mean, it was just horrifying, right? Because there's such a horrible organization for so long. It's like, as much as I despise Jay Cutler, as much as I understand people's hatred towards Mitchell Trubisky, the Chicago Bears have never understood the transition that the game made. Not one time in their history of the Super Bowl era have they understood that the quarterback needs to be able to throw the damn football. I mean, their quarterback records still have a guy who took his last snap in the NFL in 1950, and he still has records for the Chicago Bears as a quarterback. It matters where you go.
Absolutely. Of course, we're all referring to the great Sid Luckman. And just to show you the lack of the dysfunction in Chicago, Jay Cutler was named to the Chicago Bears 100 best players team. Just to that is a tough pill to swallow if you're a Bears fan. And also, you had Lovie Smith as a head coach much longer than he should have been. Same thing with Matt Nagy. Same thing with probably Mark Trestman. And I think Trestman was there a year. That should have never been a hire that should have happened. But that's not the point. And especially with the Lions, I think the worst part for them is that they had a contending team with Jim Caldwell if he would have been given a fifth year. When you look at the roster they had and what did they do? They bring in Matt Patricia and it didn't work out. That's the nice way of putting it. I do want to throw this back at you, Jackson. You know, you mentioned Jared Goff. I would like to mention that I'm in the camp. I believe Stafford's better than Goff. I'll make that clear. But I am also in the camp that I believe had Cooper Kupp not gotten hurt during the Super Bowl run, they would have beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. What do you think about that?
You know what? I honestly forgot that he got hurt during that stretch. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You look at that, that's really like maybe the only Super Bowl that Tom has won, like that wasn't because of him too. What was the final score? Like 13-3, right?
Yeah.
These were two elite offenses. I think Tom's best throw of the game was like dropping it in the bucket to Gronk on what we thought was Gronk's last NFL catch until he came out of retirement. So yeah, I can see that. Maybe if they could have squeezed out another 10 points out of that's a really good point. I'd never considered that before.
Yeah, it also didn't help when Goff put the ball right in Brandon Cooks' hands in the end zone, and obviously Stephon Gilmore, who was defensive player of the year, knocked it away at the last second. I mean, what a play by Gilmore, but the ball was right in his chest too. Another fact I would like to say is that in that game, to your point about Brady, I think his first pass was intercepted, just to kind of show you the kind of day that he had as well.
It was deflected and then picked off. Yeah. Gosh, if you think that Super Bowl was boring, just go ahead and turn it off. This podcast isn't for you. So if you think that game was boring,
that was a defensive masterclass.
That's one stat that I've always wanted to have changed. If a quarterback throws it into a DB's hands, okay, that's an interception. But when the wide receiver has deflected it, etc., that's not on the quarterback at that point. The wide receiver should have had it in his hands. Why does it go against the quarterback? It shouldn't go against the quarterback at that point. There should be a team interception stat and a quarterback interception stat, because the fault of the interception at that point is no longer the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think there's a statistic like 7 of Patrick Mahomes' interceptions were off his receiver's hands. So, that just to add to that point as well. I think we can all agree that.
If you want to do that, then we should also count turnover worthy plays that PFF keeps track of. That's like goes right into the DB's hands and he drops it. Then we have to start keeping track of those too. I feel like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Expanded stats so much anyway. So let's carry on. I mean, because look, 2021. Speaking of PFF, all of a sudden, corner yards given up becomes a statistic. Where? Since when? In 52 years of watching football, I've never heard of that before until 2021. It becomes a thing. Oh, you know why? Because the guy that they could target was a Dallas Cowboy, and it's the number one clickbait in the world, the Dallas Cowboys. Ting, ting, ting. So, yeah, we got a new stat to follow. How many yards did you give up? Well, Jalen Ramsey wasn't too far behind, and everybody says Jalen is the number one cornerback in the world. Come on. So, if they're going to do it that way, why not do it this way too?
No,
It's because we got
absolutely.
these chips in the shoulder pads now. We're just making up everything as we go along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you make a good point. Obviously, it's all
This no longer matters, and it's like, what game are you guys watching? Not the same one I've been watching for over 50 years, you know. But anyhow,
you know, I'm a big fan of like numbers and analytics as well. I also don't think analytics should determine a decision. They should just give you more information per se. I think sometimes we overanalyze the game. Football is a complex game, but in the end of the day, the objective is the same. A ball is here; it has to go here for you to win. You know, so sometimes we overanalyze things a little bit too much. Especially, you know, no offense to PFF, but sometimes I look at the grades and I think to myself, "What?" you know. But going back to just the talk about the Rams and that Super Bowl in general, I want to say this, and I have not been a fan of the Rams. I like SoFi Stadium. I thought the Rams should stay at the Coliseum. I thought it was just a really cool look, especially the night games. I thought the old uniforms, the white and the blue with the Rams on the helmet, I thought those were cool. And that team was just so filled with swagger, scoring touchdowns, jumping in the end zone, high-fiving YG. Man, that was a really great time. But of course, the Rams are looking to go back-to-back at Stafford, as far as we all agree, best quarterback in the NFC West. For Garoppolo, he's not the greatest, but he's a top, in my opinion, 16 to 20 quarterback. And when he's on the field, he wins. There's no other way to put it. You know, how many times have teams gone up to Seattle in must-win games and never win, right? He goes up to Seattle, Niners beat the Seahawks, right? He has made the playoffs twice. And in those 2 seasons were the only times he played more than like 8 or 10 games, right? And so those are the most healthy he's been. And they've made at least the NFC Championship both times. You know, and whether you want to say it's because of Kyle Shanahan's system, whether running game or whatever, well, that's football. You know, every team has the ability to run the ball. Every team has their own system. And just because he is able to do what he needs to do to win, there shouldn't be a knock against him. And as long, it doesn't matter what numbers you put up, the only number it matters is rings at the end of the day when it comes to accolades. So I think Jimmy G should deserve his flowers.
had Brady retired, Jimmy would have been the quarterback with 4 Super Bowl rings with 2.
True. Absolutely. Which he would have, that means he would have more Super Bowl rings than the guy I have for the NFC North. I think we all do as a number one quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. He only has 1. Are we all in agreement? Aaron is number 1 in the NFC North. Yeah.
I will say I am in the Aaron Rodgers is overrated club, but I'm not gonna dare say he's not the best quarterback by a landslide in that division. So
yeah,
you know, Aaron Rodgers, because of his lack of playoff success, is the only like 4-time MVP I've heard be called a game manager, and there is validity to that argument too. But yeah, the rest of the quarterbacks, and it's not just them; it's also the situations they're in. And I'm sorry, whoever thinks Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback, I need you to get your vision, your brains, everything checked, because that is not happening. Oh, Greg, do you think Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback? Okay.
And his agent in a top 10 category of embezzlers. Yeah, they qualify for that because they have swindled their way into his contract. Boy, yeah.
That crown belongs to Taysom Hill, though. There's a when you're not listening to Midnight Sports today, go back and listen. Go back and search "Move the Sticks" Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's one of the first results. And there's a very eye-opening podcast on Aaron Rodgers about by Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks of the NFL Network, and it's really insightful. And I kind of like already like thought he was a little overrated, but like it was a really kind of a deep dive on him and his career. It was fascinating and very eye-opening, and it's worth a listen, even though it's from like probably a year ago now. But yeah, go back and give it a listen because it's
2020
really,
Texas wasn't 2020, 2 years ago now.
gosh, was it? Yeah, it was. You're right. So maybe it was 2 years ago, but yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, and just two more points before we leave. I go to the NFC East, of course, Greg's favorite division. When it comes to Kirk Cousins, he should be a first ballot Hall of Fame bag getter because the amount of money he has made in his life is ridiculous. Obviously, he was on a really bad rookie contract because of a fourth rounder, I believe, at Washington. But I think he was franchise tagged twice while he was there. So he was making top 5 QB money 2 years in a row. Gets that huge contract in Minnesota. Gets extended before the last year of his contract even begins. And then obviously this would be the last year. He gets extended for another year, I think making $40 million both this year and next year, somewhere around that range. So that man, I think, is gonna, if he ends his career after, what's up, Greg?
42 million.
42, Jesus. So I think he's gonna end his just playing career earnings at over 200 million if he stops playing after the 2023 season, which I don't believe he will. Just to show you the kind of money that man has gotten. Secondly, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, here's a point that I'll put out there. Has there ever been a moment or a string of games, especially when it comes to the playoffs or end of season, where you feel that Aaron Rodgers, of course, all quarterbacks face adversity, and yeah, sometimes your team lets you down. But have you guys ever felt there was a situation where he has truly elevated the Packers into being a championship or winning team in his many years in the NFL?
Not even their Super Bowl year. Not their Super Bowl year.
Yeah. You know, they'll definitely, I mean, the only reason the Packers made the Super Bowl was because they played the Bears. And they played the Bears at Chicago, right? And I think Cully got hurt early, so it was the backup that was in. And the fact that Chicago still had an ability to win the game on the final drive before the quarterback threw an interception to the big D tackle, BJ Raji. You know, so his performance in NFC Championship games have been lackluster at best. He's lost a lot of divisional games just like horribly, obviously, last year with the Niners. There was also twice against the Cardinals. You know, so it's tough for me to say that he is a generational talent, but he isn't a generational player when it comes to success. It's tough to see because he has all the tools in his tool belt.
And I go back to that draft in 2004, and when he was in the green room for so long, and then he finally got called out, his name finally gets called, and he tells everybody that the 49ers are going to regret not drafting me and all this other nonsense. Even when he was coming out that year, I did not have him anywhere near being that great of a quarterback. No, he was good, but even then, I felt he was overrated. And the reason why I felt he was overrated, you see his interviews, you see his attitude. No, period. Just no. Spoiled, rotten, never held accountable in his life, Aaron Rodgers.
Wow, that is some strong words from Greg. Last point I want to make, I know we've been on Aaron Rodgers for a second, is that had he gone to the 49ers, I think people forget the state of disrepair the Niners were in 2004. Alex Smith looked like a bust for a very long time, and not because of him, because of the team around him. They had Frank Gore, a young Vernon Davis, and that's it. You know, it only took John Harbaugh coming in for him to truly realize his potential. Had Rodgers been in that situation, could we say he would have went to the heights and statistical numbers that we see today? I can't say that we do.
No.
Yeah, so I think we've covered Aaron Rodgers a lot, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. 4 years, like $150 million. But he did lose Devonta Adams, so we'll just have to see come 2022. Going to the NFC East, I'm going to go last on this one. I'm going to kick it off to our Cowboys fan. First, Greg, who do you have as the best quarterback in the NFC East?
Well, come on. It's so clear and easy. It's got to be the guy now in Washington. No, kidding. It's Dak.
Rain, Dakota Prescott of Mississippi State. Of course, he would be your favorite in the NFC East. Very interesting to see in terms of where he is at, and more importantly, the weapons around him, because we know where he is. But Zeke Elliott has basically gone downhill since his rookie season. I don't think anyone can truly debate that. And his drop-off has been horrific.
Well, his drop-off came after 2018.
Okay, fair enough.
He should realistically, if it wasn't for Roger Goodell's morality, CF, and the 6-game suspension, Zeke would have put up 3 straight rushing titles, bottom line. Because even when he missed those 6 games, you average everything out in the other 10 games that he did play in, he would have won the rushing title again, bottom line.
Oh, that's fair, and that's why I defer to you whenever we talk about the Cowboys. That's a fair point. I also believe that as
you're playing that crappy team this year.
I'm also of the belief that Tony Pollard right now is the more productive running back than Ezekiel Elliott. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh yeah, he's more explosive. He's better in the passing game. Bottom line is though, is good old JJ and Steven.
Yeah.
Lots of negotiation. Oh my, how many is that? Because they played right into his hands and his agent, and then they extended it. Right? They're handcuffed. Zeke is there. So you can't do anything until after this year with it because there's too much dead cap hit. Even next year, it's still $11 million. Well, you can spread it into 5 and 6 the following year for dead cap hit. But when you do contracts like that, and this is why it has been something that I've said for quite a few years, right when they signed Zeke to the big deal, I said, this is a mistake. I love Zeke, but it's a mistake. You've got to move to a running back by committee in the NFL. You avoid this massive second contract nonsense. And we've seen it with McCaffrey too. McCaffrey signs his big deal, injured. Saquon Barkley, injured. Why? Because all of them got overused.
Absolutely. I mean, Derrick Henry too. I mean, but Derrick Henry's a little different because his numbers, justify his contract. Because even after missing 8 games, he was still one top rusher statistically in the NFL. But you're absolutely correct. It's not the early 2000s anymore. We could get a guy like Jamal Lewis or Priest Holmes, or my favorite, LaDainian Tomlinson, a back that's going to give you a solid 7 to 8 years of close to 1,000-yard or over production. It's just
how many years in his all-time rushing leader?
I'm sorry, was that?
Or the guy that had the very long career, Mr. Smith, Emmett.
Oh yeah, of course, the greatest rusher, in NFL history, right? Like the guy that has 5 rushing touchdowns in Super Bowls, without a doubt, the greatest. They don't. I don't know what it is about the game because a lot of the older generation talk about it. Maybe it's overtraining. Maybe it's the lack of shots to the upper body so they go lower. There's a whole variety of things, but just running back don't last as long anymore.
You can't hit a guy. You can't hit a guy high, right? Well, running back to the old days knew how to take a high hit. They were used to it. Now, because the hits are all lower, what happens to them? Leg injuries. What else do you see happen to these guys? Hamstrings, groin, calf strain.
ACLs is a big one too.
But I'm talking about the muscular injuries, and those muscular injuries are from overuse. Be it on the field itself or off the field, and these guys are overtrained.
You're right. There's no other way to put it. Going back to Dak Prescott, now CeeDee Lamb is going to clearly be the number 1 target in Dallas when it comes to receptions. Which I'm a big CeeDee Lamb fan. I wasn't sure of him coming out of Oklahoma. I was very positive about him in terms of his athleticism. I just wasn't sure how well that would translate to the NFL game because Lincoln Riley runs that very spread offense that I wasn't sure if DBs at the NFL level obviously can keep up with it. Clearly, anywhere I had it is out the window. He is an absolute baller. They just drafted a offensive tackle who's probably going to move to offensive guard in the draft.
Yes, he is a guard.
Talking about extensively.
The NFL level, he is nowhere near a tackle. No.
Not at all. So the only question mark that to me Dak Prescott has is how does he elevate his game from this point on? Because we know what he does and we know the number he puts up, and he's having the same offensive coordinator as well, and that fantastic defense, well, obviously anchored by Michael Parsons and his fantastic rookie year, is going to be back as well. Can he put up those consistent numbers and not have those random losses come the middle of the year like the Cowboys did to Denver and Arizona towards the later end of the year? But great selection for best quarterback in the NFC East. Go kick it to you, Jackson. Who is your favorite quarterback in the NFC East?
I'm definitely gonna say Dak Prescott, but I think Jalen Hurts is severely underrated.
And I get crap. For saying the exact same thing, Jackson.
Yeah. I do too. Yeah.
He's underrated.
Yeah, he is. He really is. But yeah, I can't not go with Dak though.
Okay, that's a fair point. And I'm also the camp with you guys that Jalen Hurts is very underrated. Yes, the Eagles got blown out in the playoffs. The Eagles weren't supposed to make the playoffs, especially not under a first-year head coach, Nick Sirianni. And besides Devonta Smith, receivers that are not up to NFL level, in my opinion. Now, obviously, Jason Kelce is set to come back. Cam Jurgens could have an appearance on the team, whether that be in a rotational role, whatever, as interior lineman. Landon Dickerson has proven that I think he's going to be a fantastic NFL guard. Lane Johnson is still there. You also have Devonta Smith. That was Devonta Smith, who was less than 100 yards away from becoming the Eagles' first 1,000-yard receiver since Jeremy Maclin. You bring in a guy like A.J. Brown, who I think is an absolute athletic freak and just stud player. Jalen Hurts definitely one of the great passers in the NFL, but he can make throws. And his mobility is severely underrated. Putting that with a backfield like Miles Sanders and such, he can do a lot of dangerous things. However, he is not my top quarterback in the NFL. And Dak Prescott isn't my top quarterback in the NFL. It's not in the NFL, in the NFC East either. It is the ginger from North Dakota, Carson Wentz. And I know it's a very controversial. I don't think you guys are looking at me like, oh, this guy is unreal. But I'm gonna say the reason why. It's not just Carson Wentz. When we know what Carson Wentz is, he's a big arm that makes some very interesting decisions. And by interesting, I mean horrible. However, when you look at the weapons around him, he's getting back J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson. He has added Jahan Dotson. I thought they should have went a different route first in the draft, but he still got him. They bring in Brian Robinson Jr. out of Alabama, the running back. You still have scary Terry McLaurin, who can make catches at any point, at any distance, at any angle. You also have Curtis Samuel coming back, who was injury prone the season before. I think that he's going to go out there and he's going to make some very questionable throws, but he's going to have the talent at receiver for those throws to be made into catches. And that's why I think that there's a high chance, both statistically and just from a vision standpoint, he is going to outshine the other quarterbacks in the NFC East. Maybe I'm also just a hater. I'm not talking about. I am a hater, without a doubt. And I still remember the Eagles-Cowboys game several years ago where Carson Wentz outplayed Dak Prescott in a game where neither of them looked necessarily good. I just feel that at this point in his career, there's always a drop-off in Dak Prescott's play come either week 7, 8, 9, whatever it is bound to happen. And I have more faith in Carson Wentz to deliver multiple playoff victories than I do Dak Prescott. So for that reason, I'm going to kick it back to you, Greg, to get your thoughts on that. I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Playoff Wentz actually, how many playoff wins does Carson Wentz actually have?
Oh, a big fat 0. But I also know Ray Dakota Prescott is 1-3 in the playoffs as well.
That's one more than Carson. Now, that game that you were talking about, the Eagles-Cowboys, that was a Cowboys team that was horrifying that day. That was the entire team that was horrifying. Carson Wentz, yeah, he has arm strength. But Carson Wentz has got about a 2-cent noggin. Like, give me a break. The stuff that he has done to cost his teams, be it the Eagles or the Colts football game, it's just absolutely ridiculous, and you just cannot do that stuff in the NFL, period. Yet he's done them.
The meme pages had a field day with that Titans pick 6 play. I will say,
that was
go back and look at the context though. It's better than taking a safety. Much rather would have had the pick 6 than a safety. So go back and look at the play clock and the timeouts and all that. And the game clock and the timeouts, and it actually was, about as good as a pick 6 gets. But I don't agree with you, Brock. But Carson Wentz does get a lot of people love to make, meme pages love to make fun of him and all that. He doesn't deserve all of it for sure. But it's interesting. We'll see who wins out that quarterback battle.
Yeah. So. And and those are both fair points to say. And obviously, people are going to clown Carson Wentz on his last game in Indianapolis. Not only did they lose to the worst team in the NFL, which was Jacksonville Jaguars,
they haven't won there since 2012, though. So that's
Exactly.
like an organizational thing. That's not on Carson.
No, that's exactly what I was about to say. That's not a thing that is just to Carson Wentz. That happened to Phillip Rivers, to Andrew Luck, and to Jacoby, like the quarterback carousel that is in Indianapolis, alongside the fact that they lost to a Raiders team, which shouldn't have put up 23 points on the road either. Looking back at the schedule, he has victories over the Cardinals, Patriots, Texans. They went 31-0. Only a 7-point loss to a Buccaneers team that was balling on the day. They absolutely went up to Buffalo and absolutely smoked the Bills. And when you look back at, yes, Jonathan Taylor did have an incredible season. That's without a doubt. I just take a look at the fact that Antonio Gibson has the ability not to have that kind of season, but to be a very effective runner. J.D. McKissick is a very good Swiss Army knife, and the fact that the three-headed wide receivers. You also got Adam Humphries, who had a very nice 2021. You also have De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina, who also had a very nice 2021, very good rookie season. I just look at what Washington was able to accomplish with a guy like Taylor Heineke. I think Wentz is just miles beyond. I like Taylor Heineke. I want to say that real quick. And he has a good story.
Some other bad news for that little prediction, man.
What's up?
Kayvon Thibodeau, Micah Parsons. Yeah, good luck, Carson.
Hey, at the same time, your boy Dak Prescott gotta compete against those guys too. So we'll see what happens. Because I remember when that Niners D line was getting home, the throws was going wide right, wide left, wide in the ground.
Everything's been fixed. We're good. Tyron Smith is going to give us 17 games. No, come on. I'm going to get 17 games.
Absolutely. Yeah, me when I lie, right? So very interesting. I just go at Carson just for the sheer, not just him, the weapons around him, I think can make plays that other receivers can't. But of course, doesn't matter what we say. It all matters is going to happen come game day. So that finishes our first segment for best quarterback in each division. Let's go to the next one. Which is your favorite for the MVP for quarterbacks? Quarterbacks have to win it. Would just be the highest quarterback with the most amount of votes. Kicking it back to you, Greg. Who are you thinking?
Josh Allen.
So who's that?
Josh Allen.
Yeah. Not much needs to be said. Phenomenal runner, passer, does everything well. Fourth year in that system. However, Brian Dable did move on, so he does have Ken Dorsey. However, all reports coming out, Ken Dorsey was highly involved in play calling and play designing, so it shouldn't be too much of a transition. Of course, Dorsey won a national championship with that phenomenal Miami Hurricanes team. Jackson, who do you think is the quarterback that could most likely win MVP?
Matthew Stafford. The Super Bowl win really solidified him as a lead, and I think he'll be on the radar for MVP from the start of the season, something he's never had.
Yeah, and that's not a bad take at all, especially Cooper Kupp was the winner of the Triple Crown of receiving, and he doesn't look like he's stopping anytime soon. May I just add, what a contract the Rams got on him. That man is owed way more money. One of the best contracts in terms of value in football. Great. Obviously added Allen Robinson as well. OBJ could be back. He might not play all 16 games, but he's another weapon that they can go to. Tyler Higbee's still there. The only piece of that offense, question mark, is left tackle because Whitworth retired. But knowing the Rams, they'll find somebody in the fourth that turns into all-pro, knowing them. Cam Akers will probably have a full season back as well. So great pick. I'm going, obviously, kind of biased, Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they're all coming back, alongside the fact that statistically he has had the most impressive start to an NFL career from any quarterback in history. Won Offensive Rookie of the Year, absolutely blew away the touchdown record set by Baker Mayfield. His game went supernova come 2021, during 2021, and it was only stopped by a defense that could not stop the run if they needed to. And we saw that multiple times. Only quarterback to ever go like five on fourth down conversions in that game against the Raiders. Do the stud. And third year in the league. Physically, he looks like being the best shape of his life. He's shown that he can run the football as well. Just probably I would stay away from the design runs. With all that being said, three great choices. Josh Allen, a dude that I'm surprised hasn't won one already, but is set to win one for sure. Justin Herbert, a guy that has elevated his game in his first 3 seasons. and a guy like Matt Stafford, who has been putting up mad numbers both in Detroit and now with the weapons he has in LA. With that being said, let's go to the rookies. Which rookie quarterback will be a full-time starter by the end of the season? I'm gonna kick it to you, Jackson. Who you taking?
I'm going to go with Sam Howell, who you mentioned earlier that I am a fan of, but that's most likely because of injury to Carson Wentz. Kenny Pickett, I'm going to go with just because I don't think Trubisky is going to be ending up being the best option for them. Then I'm going to go with Desmond Ridder. I think it's really important for Ridder to grow alongside London and Pitts to have kind of that nucleus on that offense. And Ridder is probably maybe the most mature. I'm not saying most pro ready, but most mature out of all the quarterbacks that we have in this draft class. So I'm gonna say those three.
Great selections. Going to you, Greg. Who are you taking?
I don't see Kenny Pickett being the answer in Pittsburgh. Sorry. I don't see Kenny Pickett being the answer for anybody at any given time. He played one good season in college. One.
So did Joe Burrow. Just saying.
Different.
Also, his junior year wasn't too bad either.
That's right. Different scenario altogether. And yes.
Okay,
Burrow,
fair enough.
the junior
I'm just saying that's not why, but you're right. That is different.
Kenny's had 5 of them, and only one of them was good.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
The best situation for me out of the rookies is Ridder in Atlanta. I think the other guy that is in a good spot, Matt Corral and Sam Howell both. Corral has to play. There's no pressure on him. There's none. And the same thing for Howell. Does that mean Heineke's gone, Wentz is gone? There's no pressure on him to have to be, the great superstar right off the bat, etc. Nobody's going to expect a guy who was drafted that late to come out and be the superstar quarterback, etc. So I think they're in better position. I don't see Malik getting on the field for Tennessee with his Tannehill there. I really don't, unless again injury, and then that team, Lord only knows what would happen if Malik has to take the reins this year. I just don't. The receiving core doesn't thrill me. You've got Derrick Henry, so why do you need to run Malik, right? And Malik's number one thing is his leg at this point. So, I really don't see these quarterbacks in this class having an impact this year. None of them, really.
No, that's fair because none of these quarterbacks are expected to start week one. The only one that has a real chance is obviously Kenny Pickett, but they did bring in Mitch Trubisky for a reason. For me, the quarterback that's going to be a full-time starter by the end of the season, I have two, which you guys have mentioned, both from the NFC South, is Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder. Matt Corral, because where do the Panthers go with Sam Darnold, right? If he doesn't come out excelling, he's going to get the boot because he's on his final year of his contract in that 5th-year option, right? To extend him, they would have to shell out a fair amount of money. There's rumors that they're already thinking about bringing back Cam Newton anyway, which shows that they don't really have a lot of faith in Darnold anyway. They can't cut him because his 5th year is fully guaranteed. You have a guy like Matt Corral who ran a system that was similar to what Matt Rule ran at Baylor in terms of the new era of the RPO game. You also got to consider the fact that if they do have a hit with Corral, he's on a 4-year deal as a rookie, but he's not only is he on a rookie contract, he's on a non-first round rookie contract, which means that the Panthers have a bunch more money that they can spend all over the field as well. So I think Corral is going to have an opportunity early. And Desmond Ridder, because Marcus Mariota is injury prone, there's no other way to put it. Whenever he gets tackled, it seems like he's out for 3 weeks. It sucks because he's a really good talent. But for that reason, I could see Desmond Ridder getting an opportunity early in Atlanta. So with all that being said, which rookie quarterback do you think is just going to have the best career overall? My pick is Malik Willis for 2 reasons. one, he's in the best situation for his skill set, and two, his competition per se is most likely getting cut after this season because he owed like 12 million or some 22, some big quarterback number in Ryan Tannehill. Malik Willis can run any offense. He can run a spread offense. He can operate on the pro, but I highly doubt they're going to do that. RPO obviously would be very dangerous with a guy like Derrick Henry, and also a guy like Robert Woods. We don't know how Burks is going to turn out, but they do have a first-round wide receiver there. It just seems like it's set up for Willis to take the reins anyway. And unlike Kenny Pickett, from an offensive perspective, they have tools that he can use. Pickett, the O-line for Pittsburgh needs to be retooled. It's an absolute catastrophe. I think there's like a statistic that says the highest paid player on offense for Pittsburgh is Derek Watt, who's their fullback. Najee Harris is a great addition, but again, he's a running back. So from a health issue, you never know how that's going to go. There's Chase Claypool is a great talent, but there's question marks on his character. Deontay Johnson was a Pro Bowler. Can he repeat that? I'm not too sure. But from what I've seen from Pickett in college, he's honestly has Carson Wentz mentality sometimes. He thinks he can make the throw into triple coverage, and it just turns out into an interception. So with all that being said, I'm taking Willis to have the best career overall. Who are you taking, Greg?
I'm going to take to North Carolina, Sam Howell.
Okay, and he will be, of course, a member of the Washington Commanders. If he steps in this season, next season, he's going to have a lot of weapons around him. When he did have weapons around him at North Carolina was rolling. And they probably would have beat A&M had all their great players stayed. Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, right? Got around.
Yeah. Big bowl game. Now we can just start, unless you're playing for the national championship, we're going to start saying you can just toss the bowl game results out because the best players are skipping them, right? They are. But I think Sam Howell, and the one reason I say Howell is because his junior year, his senior year, there's something that Sam Howell did better than the rest of them as far as I'm concerned, and that's his individual compete level. I love Sam Howell, the competitor.
Yeah. You talk about quarterback that's never say die. That's Sam Howell written all over it. Of course, he played in both bowl games, Orange Bowl in 2020, and obviously last year against South Carolina in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, a game he did not have to participate in as well. If not for an absolute collapse on defense, North Carolina should have beat NC State without a doubt, purely based off the heroics of Sam Howell. And again, the situation in Washington is not ideal in terms of O-line. When we talk about weapons around him, it can be a fun time for him. Jackson, who are you taking at quarterback to the best career?
It's really hard to speculate on that just so far ahead. So I'm gonna use two things. I'm gonna use age of the pieces around them and the division that they're in as kind of my starting ground, right? Because of that, I'm gonna go, and I hate to say this as a Bucks fan, but I'm gonna go with Desmond Ridder. He has such a great young receiving room in Drake London and in Kyle Pitts. I know beyond that it gets a little fuzzy, but Atlanta has had a history, albeit if it was under the previous GM, they have had a history of drafting great wide receivers. So I'm not too worried about that. And that division, man, after Brady retires for good, the biggest threat is going to be either Kyle Trask, or a guy that's still playing in college right now that we don't know about. So I'm going to go with Ridder. That's kind of my educated guess with that. It's really hard to say. If it is Ridder, I'll probably be more surprised than if it isn't. But man, I really like him a lot, and I wouldn't be shocked if we looked back on this draft and said, you know what, that was probably the best quarterback pick that we had, especially for the value they got him at. So that's my 2 cents.
You guys have made some very excellent points. I want to move on. Obviously, we talked about the quarterbacks that were first taken in the draft. I want to talk about the guys that are taken last or not taken at all, with the 7th round or undrafted free agent rookie quarterbacks. Out of those guys, who do you think, Jackson, has the best chance of being a starter or making an impact in the NFL?
first seventh, that was like a round 7 or like a UDFA or something like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm gonna go with Bailey Zappi. He's a style that Bill Belichick loves. He was incredibly productive at Western Kentucky. Mac Jones is great. Okay, Mac Jones is a really good young talent, but there aren't many UDFAs that are going in behind quarterbacks that are like worse, if that makes sense. So who knows? Maybe something turns into that. I really liked Zappi a lot coming out of college. I covered him a lot on hardware because of how productive he was and all that. They ended up picking, he wasn't a UDFA, he was a late round pick.
I think he was like fifth or
surprising.
sixth, something like that.
Yeah, he was day 3. Honestly, day 3 after round 4, it got dropped off by a pretty good bit as far as the talent gap. So I'm gonna go with Zappi.
Fair enough. Greg, who are you taking for your day 3 or undrafted free agent QB?
Undrafted free agent from the University of Nevada, Carson Strong to the Eagles.
Carson Strong, from a physical standpoint and also from a mechanic standpoint, is arguably one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. As a University of Hawaii fan, I have absolute bias. I don't like because from my opinion, I don't think that he has the dog in him, like some of us younger generations like to say. But essentially, I have never seen him elevate his team, nor have I seen the Nevada team under his command win anything big. And that says a lot when you have Jay Norvell as the head coach and Matt Mummy, obviously son of Hal Mummy, the air raid, as your offensive coordinator. They had a chance to win the Mountain West in 2020. They dropped that, went down to Hawaii, to a Hawaii team that had one dude named Calvin Turner Jr. and a bunch of other guys that it was just, they didn't have a great squad at that time. And he lost. 2021, he was coming in. I thought they were going to be the favorites for the Mountain West, them and Fresno State. And the guy just didn't show up. He had talent like Romeo Dobbs, who's arguably one of the best deep threat wide receivers in the draft. Tight end Cole Turner, not a good blocking tight end, but jump ball machine. And I just felt that he just didn't have the ability to win when necessary. So that's why I'm going against him. But with that being said, Greg, why did you go with him?
The thing that hurt Carson is that he played when he shouldn't have. He should have taken more time to recover once they used the cadaver piece on him. He didn't take enough time to recover, and that hurt him. I think had he just taken the time away, you could have used that film from the previous year where it was good film, etc. It's happened before. I think he played when he shouldn't have, and that goes to his compete level too, though.
Yes.
He wanted to play.
No, absolutely. And with my evaluation of him, competitor was never a question mark when it came to a guy like Carson Strong. And arguably, he's been Nevada's best quarterback since Colin Kaepernick, as far as I can remember. So he is a very interesting choice, especially when you consider the situation he's in and the fact that the starting quarterback for the Eagles, he's a runner. And whenever you run, you put yourself more in danger. So there is a chance if, he's healthy, he could see the field in 2022. My pick is Skylar Thompson, quarterback out of Kansas State, drafted in the 7th round by the Miami Dolphins. I heard a lot of impressive things in his post-season, pre-draft workouts, his bowl game appearances, not bowl game, but Senior Bowl, Senior Bowl, like stuff like that. Those kind of games. When it came to, there was a, it was kind of like, I think it was the East-West Shrine, some bowl, but UNLV where they were going out. He was clearly the best quarterback out there. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but I think he's fairly accurate. He's going to a situation in Miami where, he might not be able to get the ball to a guy like Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill 30, 40, 50 yards downfield, but he can definitely put it on the money in those short yard range and let them take off, alongside the fact he played at a very good system at Kansas State, and he has that mobility to his game. He's also big and strong, so he's able to take hits. And the fact that when it comes to Miami, starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, he has had a history of injuries, obviously coming from Alabama with a hip. He missed the opening part of last season with that injury. And from his rookie season, he never really got a good structure in terms of training, in terms of having a plan of how to grow and develop him as a quarterback. Now he's entering his third year. If he doesn't show out or if he gets injured, I think Skylar Thompson could have the opportunity to step in and take off with that role. So he's my choice. Want to shout out Jackson's co-host Omar real quick. His pick would have been E.J. Perry, quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you want to learn more about Omar and his love for E.J. Perry, I'll drop that link in the description below. Moving on to the next question and the final question of our 2022 quarterbacks, but it's more of an NFL quarterback question as well. I want you guys to rank the 2019, 2021, and 2022 quarterback classes from first to last. Obviously, we are excluding 2020. Herbert and Burrow would clearly be number one. So with all that being said, Greg, what is your ranking?
I'll go 2021, 2019, 2022.
Okay. All right. So 2021, 2019, and 2022. Obviously, 2021 had the great class of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Davis Mills, and more. And in 2019, the two quarterbacks that had the most success is first overall pick, Kyler Murray, and sixth round selection, Gardner Minshew. Jackson, what's your list?
I'm going to go 2021, 2022, 2019. 2022 above 2019 only because the jury is obviously, just getting into deliberation on that, right? It's like we don't really know much about this class and how it'll translate. If I had to put money on it, I'd say that probably Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder and possibly Sam Howell will have really respectable NFL careers that'll go through, at least 2 or 3 contracts on there, but obviously, would be shocked if I'm right on that. So we'll yet to see on that. 2019, obviously Kyler Murray and the late great Dwayne Haskins. Looking back at that class, I love Kyler. Obviously a good quarterback, and but outside of that, we'll see with Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll and all that. So there's a lot still out on those guys too, right? But I'm going to go with 2022 just because it's so fresh and new.
No, that's fair. I'm going to go with Greg. I'm going to go 2021 as the best, 2019 and then 2022. 2021 is clear. You can have Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. Them alone would already be
Davis
enough.
Mills.
I was just about to get to him. I was like, those 5 would have been enough. Davis Mills had an extraordinary rookie season considering all that he had going for him, which was nothing, and then all he had going against him, which was everything, right? It's just a great QB class overall. The reason why I have 2019 over 2022 is because I don't see a Pro Bowler in the 2022 class. The only one that can get close, in my opinion, is Malik Willis. Kyler Murray's already been to the Pro Bowl, so that is already a nod to that class. Daniel Jones, I don't think is that bad of a quarterback, just a quarterback that is put in a bad position, made worse by his own decisions on the football field. However, when you look at his fundamentals, he can throw a ball through a car wash and it won't be wet. Right? That he has great velocity on his throws. It's gonna be interesting, obviously, with the Daboll system. When you put him in a system where it's to his skill set, I think he can succeed. This is a very controversial statement, but I stick to it. I said that if you put Daniel Jones either last season or in 2020 with the Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota makes the playoffs either one of those years. And that is not going to because Minnesota has a lot of things that the Giants have. They don't have the greatest O-line, but they have arguably one of the best right tackles in the NFL. A great running duo with Dalvin Cook and Madison, and then Justin Jefferson. Right? And yes, he is taking a step back with Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is taking a step back, but Justin Jefferson is that dude. Daniel Jones has all the ability to get him the ball anywhere on the field, and that's why I feel that way. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins was selected 3rd overall. Rest in peace. I was really looking forward to seeing what he did with his career come 2022. So it's just a really unfortunate tragedy. I wish him and his family the best, or his family the best as they move forward, and wish him the best as he journeys on to the next chapter the afterlife. Gardner Minshew at number 6, coming out of that air raid Mike Leach system in Washington State, absolutely exploded onto the scene week 1 when Dick Foles went out. And quite frankly, Jacksonville failed to capitalize on him because there was just like this weird moment in time where Jacksonville football was exciting to watch. And it was partly because of him. He has ability to be mobile. He can throw the ball fairly well. And in his one start last season with the Eagles, they won. So that just kind of, backs up what I've been saying. And for anyone questioning whether Gardner Minshew can play in the NFL, the Eagles traded Joe Flacco to the Jets so they could keep Minshew. Not only did they trade for Minshew, but trade Joe Flacco away so they could keep Minshew as a number 2 quarterback. 2022, talked about them enough. Like I said, I don't see a Pro Bowler, maybe Malik Willis at best. Possibly Sam Howell, he'd be my number 2 choice if I had to see who has the best chance of becoming a Pro Bowler. But I don't see that guy in that class, and that's why I have it 2021, 2019, and 2022. All right, that was a mouthful when it came to the current state of the NFL quarterbacks. Let's kick it to the college ranks. This past draft, just one quarterback was selected in the first round. That is expected to change come 2020, the 2023 draft. Greg, I'm going to kick it to you first. How many QBs do you think could go in the first round in 2023? And with that number, who do you think could be those quarterbacks?
Well, we all know the thirst that NFL teams have when it comes to the drafting quarterbacks in most normal years. We have a much deeper quarterback class coming out in 2022. I can see 5 first rounders.
5. And who are those first rounders?
Maybe higher. There's a whole bunch of guys this year, obviously. I mean, you got Stroud and Young. You've got Van Dyke in Miami, depending how they look this year. Jurkovic at Boston College. There's so many guys that could end up going in the first round, depending on the type of year they have this year for their teams, right? I can also see guys that are even at smaller schools. If Grayson McCall pulls off another great year for Coastal Carolina, he could bump himself all the way into a first round pick. Somebody may say he could be the guy for us, right? It's very deep compared to last year. Another guy in a similar situation to Davis Mills in Houston, same university, Tanner McKee at Stanford. He was almost tempted to pull the Davis Mills and go early, and I thank you. Somebody talked him out of it. He needs one more year of college. Davis Mills actually needed the one more year too, but he got away with it. If Davis Mills had stayed, he would have been the first quarterback taken in this draft. Bottom line, he would have been.
That's without a doubt. I mean, not only does he fit the mold that most NFL GMs like to see in a quarterback, tall pocket passer with some mobility and big arm. When you look at everybody else, it was second to none in terms of talent. So yeah, that is a list. A guy you left out, which of course we're going to talk to later, is somebody that's been rising. I'm personally not high on him, but he is rising in several circles. Will Levis as well. Jackson.
But look at, there's so many of them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There is so many of them. Jackson, how many quarterbacks do you think could go in the first of 2023, and who are they?
I think that maybe, I don't know how many, who knows, maybe we'll have 6 or 7 or something crazy after there were hardly any taken this year in the first round. I'm going to go with 4, though, guys. I feel pretty comfortable. 3 and 1 wild card. Obviously, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I think all of us have those. I've got Anthony Richardson. Obviously, as a Gator fan, I'm biased to watch every snap of him in Florida. But, man, he's got all the tools in the toolbox. I mean, he just went to the hardware store and bought it out. So, I mean, he's got everything there, and he'll be under, new leadership in Billy Napier as his new head coach. Hopefully he can develop. I mean, look at what they did at Louisiana, right, with their quarterback room and just with NFL, developing NFL talent in general. So we'll see. I know health was an issue who knows? I wasn't in the facility. You're getting a lot of mixed reports now that Mullen is out, of players openly saying, yeah, Richardson wasn't really that hurt. He had just made up his mind on Emory Jones. There was a article earlier this week by 24/7, I think, about that. But yeah, so Richardson is my third. Also wouldn't be shocked if Jake Hayner from Fresno State ended up sneaking in there. Really like Jake's stuff, and super productive guy. I mean, Fresno State has had produced NFL talent before at that position. So
Yeah, that's a great list. And I'm kind of in the middle between both of you, because I think on the low end, there's going to be at least 4 quarterbacks selected in the first round come 2023. I think on the high end, we could possibly see 8. Especially there could be some teams that select the guy for the future, considering the first round, you get that 5th-year option automatic. I went down the middle. I went with the median. I went 6 quarterbacks to be selected in the 2023 first round of the NFL draft. My 4 sure's are obviously Stroud and Bryce Young. I think Tyler Van Dyke has a very high chance of going if he declares. The only question mark I have with him is not him. It's his coaching staff and his head coach, Mario Cristobal. We saw how badly Cristobal's offense held back Justin Herbert in college. And that's because he likes to run a very run dominant and like read option offense. That's why Anthony Brown was his quarterback over Tyler Show last season, and why Show transferred. With all that being said, I love the stuff that I saw from him, especially considering his Miami team wasn't that good. A guy that was there named Charleston Rambo, I thought he was going to explode onto the scene for Miami. He didn't end up showing up. Obviously, Garrett King was the initial starter, so Van Dyke didn't even get a full season as the starter. So I think he's going to take that. He's going to run with it. The ACC is very depleted at the moment compared to years past. So there could be that. It could be Miami's time to make a run at both the ACC and also a potential playoff spot. And if he can get to the playoffs, I think he's a first-round pick without a doubt. Will Levis is a guy that I can see going high. I'm not very high on him, and I'm very cautious because Kentucky just lost their offensive coordinator. He went back to the Los Angeles Rams. They also lost talent all over the field, most notably Wan'Dale Robinson, who went to the Giants. However, he has shown that not only he has the ability to win in the SEC, he has the ability to play well and be consistent. Another guy that I could see sneaking in is Jake Hayner as well from Fresno State. Jeff Tedford is coming back as head coach for Fresno State. And obviously, when you have Tedford's name attached to you, that's just a little added bonus when it comes to what NFL GMs look like. But even without Tedford being there, I really love Hayner's mechanics. He does make some questionable decisions at times, but he's also just growing. I think he could have like a Zach Wilson type of arc where he didn't have a necessarily great season in 2019, which I was a Hawaii Bowl when Zach Wilson and BYU lost to my Hawaii Warriors. But come 2020, Zach Wilson absolutely lit it up. I could see that happening with Jake Hayner. Another guy out of Washington State, the transfer from Incarnate Wood, Cam Ward. I don't know if he'll declare because it would be his first season at Washington State. However, that offense is suited for him to take off. He can make a variety of throws. He can make off-platform throws. He can make plays when plays break down. He has great mobility, good height, great accuracy. Can throw from a variety of angles, and he's entering a Washington State offense, which is they're switching from Nick Rolovich's run and shoot to a more air raid spread offense, but they're still going to be throwing the ball a lot. And I just don't feel that the Pac-12 defenses are up to a point where they can stop him effectively. The only defenses that could have a shot is possibly Oregon because Dan Manning is the head coach there now, and they always have studs. But that's kind of about it for Cam Ward. Another guy so those were my 6 who I think for sure. There's 3 names that I think could sneak in that 7 and 8 spot depending on how they do in 2022. First one is Spencer Rattler. Obviously, this is a guy that received a lot of hype from Oklahoma in 2021. It didn't work out. Obviously, he got replaced in the Red River rivalry by Caleb Williams, and he kind of just like wandered since. However, to me, it's a question of, one, was it because he didn't have Shane Beamer there, or was it because Lincoln Riley's offense was just not tailored to his style? I don't know, but he is going to South Carolina back with Shane Beamer again. So there's a chance that he could show out. And if he shows out in the SEC, like that's a number one ticket to be a first round selection. Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, he's entering that RPO system under new offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, and obviously Oklahoma's just stacked talent. And the last guy I could see sneaking into the top 7 or 8 is Tanner McKee, which we've already mentioned. With all that being said, I know that was a mouthful. I'm gonna kick it back to you, Greg. Which quarterback do you think has the best chance to win the Heisman in 2022?
At this point, you got to give Young the nod. I mean, he won it last year, so until somebody takes it from him, he's probably going to be the number one guy for that, right? I will disagree with you about the Spencer Rattler mention that you made. And I'll do it for this reason. Scouting point of view, the stunt he pulled at Oklahoma gives that to his character. He has a huge strike against him that the NFL will they don't like that stuff, period. And everybody saw it because they saw it on national TV. He has got to do a huge character turnaround in order to become a first round draft pick.
I completely agree with you. There is no question mark, especially what happened at the Cotton Bowl when he was the only Oklahoma player not on the field to receive the golden hat. I also think that he is in the best position to do it because he's been knocked off the pedestal. Obviously, coming into last season, he was projected number 1 overall pick. Oklahoma was like the number 1 team in the nation, right? You're put on this pedestal you've been on since you were on QB1 as a high schooler. Now you're knocked all the way to the ground. You saw somebody else go on and eclipse all the work you've done. Oklahoma was chanting for Caleb Williams to come to the game while Rattler was in against West Virginia. That has to be a blow to the Eagle. He's going to a program that is good, but it's not in the upper echelon of the SEC, especially not anymore with South Carolina, though they are a rising team. So he has the ability to really reshape his image. So I will give him that benefit of the doubt that because I don't think he's ever been in this type of situation before where he's no longer that dude in the nation, right? He's no longer a top recruit or a top QB or anything like that. He's a guy everyone essentially shits on, to put it bluntly. So I think he has a shot, but I agree with everything you just said. When it comes to the Heisman, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going CJ Stroud. Nothing against Chris Young. I just feel that for a Heisman winner to go back-to-back, it's only been done once, and that was Archie Griffin. But to do that, you have to eclipse your previous Heisman year, which is going to be very hard to do for Bryce Young, especially considering all the weapons that left Alabama through the draft. Whereas CJ Stroud has come into his own, especially in that Rose Bowl game. My goodness, did he ball out. He didn't have Chris Olave, didn't have Garrett Wilson. All he had was Jackson Smith and Jimbo, who had a career day himself. They both are going to be back at Ohio State. I don't really see a real competitor against Ohio State. I think he's going to roll through the Big Ten. I don't think Michigan State is going to be as good as they were last season because they're not able to rely on Kenneth Walker anymore. I don't think Michigan is going to be as good either, obviously losing 2 first-round graded pass rushers in Ojabo and Hutchinson. With all that being said, I just think that Stroud has the benefit of not winning the Heisman, so he will win the Heisman. Jackson, who do you think is going to win the Heisman?
I think it's going to be Bryce Young just because he won it last year. And like you said, repeat winners are very unusual. This is just a theory of mine. I've heard no one else say this, but I think CJ Stroud's a little less likely because I think we're going to idealize Ohio State a little bit less because of Urban Meyer. Obviously, there was that sort of like, sorry, I can't think of the word where Ryan Day, took over from Succession, where he took over from Urban Meyer and like that whole mentality, like the leader that we saw Meyer as and that we see Ryan Day as is like kind of diminished after just the disaster in Jacksonville. So after those two, it's wide open. I'm going to say Anthony Richardson. I know, obviously, I'm biased. I'm going to say I think Richardson actually does have a legitimate shot if his main 3 guys, if Shorter, Henderson, and Whittemore can all stay in, Zipper, his tight end, if they can all stay healthy, he has a legitimate shot. We've got an amazing running back by committee that's going on there. Obviously, with Montreal Johnson, the transfer, and Naquan Wright still on the roster. Demarcus Bowman, who feels like I've been waiting to see since middle school play. So we've got a nice running back by committee. After that, no offense to Frazier's, Weston, Reynolds, all those guys, but it's like the wide receiver room is a lot less deep after you get past those three guys. The drop off is pretty steep. So if Florida can stay healthy as a team, and Richardson obviously needs to stay healthy for that, I think he does have a legitimate shot, especially with the improvements to the running back room and to the offensive line.
I'll say this though. 2022.
What again?
I'll say this for this upcoming college football season. This is one of those years where there's a very good chance a quarterback does not get the Heisman Trophy.
Yes, that is true. We're sticking to quarterbacks today, but there are plenty of guys outside of there that could win it. That's very true, Greg.
Yeah. Quite frankly, a guy I've been really high on for a long time, and a non-quarterback is Bijan Robinson, Texas, the running back.
Yeah.
If the thing that stopped Bijan Robinson is Steve Sarkisian, because he stopped putting him in open space. When Bijan Robinson is in open space, you cannot tackle him. He's virtually untackleable. If Steve Sarkisian wasn't just a horrible play caller, and I'll be honest, I dislike Steve Sarkisian as a head coach. Great OC, horrible head coach, especially when the pressure gets turned up. I think Bijan Robinson wins the Heisman last year, but that's beside the point. Going back to your point about Anthony Richardson, not a bad pick at all. A lot going for him, considering he plays in the weaker division of the SEC, just to start out with. Also, Georgia we don't know what they're going to be, considering the fact that, yeah, they still have the guys like Matt McConkey and such, but they had a bunch of guys on the defense leave in the draft. Number 1 defensive tackle, number 2 defensive tackle, number 1 defensive edge, 3 linebackers, safety, right? All are in the NFL now. How does Kirby Smart replace them? Can that offense replace the 2 running backs, White and Cook? I'm not sure about that. I'm sure they have some 5-star stud, most knowing them. You also got to consider the fact that Tennessee is great offensively, but defensively, lots of question marks there. I think Vanderbilt is in that division as well, so they're a non-factor. So there's a lot riding for Florida, and I really like Billy Napier a lot. The only issue is the fact that he plays against Bryce Young in the same conference, so there would always be that comparison. And with numbers, Hendon Hooker should put up a lot in Josh Heupel's no huddle offense. So that were the 2 things that could go against him, but definitely a very credible dark horse candidate at the University of Florida. The only other thing that I can think of to mention before we move on is what you said about Ohio State and Ryan Day, Urban Meyer. I understand why you said that. I also don't think it doesn't matter, because Urban Meyer literally let a domestic abuser stay on staff, get suspended, and then give the reins to Ryan Day for 3 games, and no one really batted an eye. So I don't think that's going to matter as much.
Unfortunately, that's a very good point, Brock. So yeah, unfortunately, you're right. So yeah, good point.
It's the nature of the beast. Urban, as a Florida fan, that 2008 national championship team, holy moly, was there some bad dudes. Obviously, Urban Meyer and that assistant coach is a GA at the time at Florida. Janoris Jenkins is on that team. Aaron Hernandez, the late Aaron Hernandez is on that team. The Pouncey brothers, Riley Cooper, right?
Not on the roster, but Dan Bilzerian was on campus too. So it's just like a culture thing. But Tim Tebow was there, so that balances.
Cam Newton was a freshman that year. Percy Harvin. So they still get their flowers, as being national champions. So that's why I just think the nature of the beast of college football is more of that sweep it under the rug. We don't care as long as you win. If they lose, oh yeah, now it's a big issue. But honestly, if Jacksonville, hypothetically, right, started the season undefeated, they were 6-0, none of the Urban Meyer controversies would have ever made light, your skeleton, in my opinion, in football, your skeletons only come out of your closet when you start losing. That's just my personal opinion. That's how I felt. I felt that way since 2010 when Cam Newton's father, Cecil, was accused of taking money from Mississippi State. I think had Cam Newton lost the Iron Bowl to Alabama, that would have been an even bigger deal. But since he won, we all just moved past it. But that's a conversation for another time. Let's talk about the second round of the NFL draft. Which quarterback do you see falling out of the first or not being selected in the first come 2023, yet still having an excellent career? I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna name a guy I've already mentioned, Jake Haener. I think teams aren't gonna rate him as high because of one, his size, and two, the fact he plays in the Mountain West. I think he's gonna get the Derek Carr treatment. I think he's gonna have a Derek Carr-esque career, and there's a lot of things about his game that's very Derek Carr-like. So I think he's going to drop to the second, but I think he's going to be the most non-first round productive quarterback come 2023. Kicking it back to you, Jackson. Who are you taking?
I'm going to go with Grayson McCall out of Coastal Carolina. I doubt that a Coastal Carolina quarterback will go in the first round, but man, he has enough tools in the toolbox to be successful for sure.
Fair enough. And, he's a guy that's been in that RPO system for a very long time. So not a lot of adjustment needs to be made in his execution of that offense. Going to you, Greg. Who are you taking?
I'll say Yurkovich out of Boston College then, because I also had the same as Jackson, but I'll throw in Yurkovich in there.
Fair. Definitely not going to get the love because he plays at a lower end ACC school that in a year that a lot of quarterbacks dominate the draft top. They come from those bigger programs, but not a scrub in any sort of fashion at all. So that'd be very interesting to see. So let's keep it with the ACC talk. Let's name our top three quarterbacks in the Power 5 conferences: the ACC, Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC. Greg, who are your selections for the ACC? Your top three quarterbacks.
I've got Yurkovich, Tyler Van Dyke, Brennan Armstrong, and an honorable mention to NC State's Devin Murray.
Excellent. I'm okay. Do you, Jackson? Who are you taking?
Brock, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know enough about these 2023 quarterbacks to have a top three for each conference, to at least to have an informed opinion. I could name three, but I haven't watched enough on them to really know enough as I should. So I've got to get my top quarterback in each. If you want me to, I can just run through each of those. ACC to start off, I've got Sam Hartman as my top guy from Wake Forest. Big 10, CJ Stroud, obviously Bryce Young from the SEC, despite my love for Anthony Richardson. I've got Dylan Gabriel for the Big 12. I really love, obviously, a transfer quarterback, and really love what Gabriel did before, and really excited to see what he'll do at Oklahoma as we kind of see that transition of power over there in Norman. Then for the Pac-12, how can I not say Caleb Williams? Obviously, another transfer quarterback from Oklahoma this time. The Pac-12 is already a pretty weak conference, and so having a talent like Williams in a spotlight like there is at USC is something that'll be interesting to watch. I also love, it feels like the Pac-12, unless it's like something crazy like Caleb Williams, always gets swept under the rug because like us people on the East Coast like don't like staying up, or non-diehards on the East Coast don't like to stay up until like 3 a.m. to watch football. But man, I love that, like, hey, we'll bring some attention to the West Coast like you guys deserve over there, because it's great football over there too. And people don't watch it enough, and Heisman voters don't watch it enough. And it's something I'm looking forward to. Hey, maybe we bring the Pac-12 a little bit more attention.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think definitely USC hiring Lincoln Riley helped with that, getting more primetime news, because the Pac-12 after dark, from a network standpoint, is just not happening in terms of national attention. From the no, it is not. It's the same goal as the Mountain West.
Mid-afternoon on the West Coast, and like early night on the East Coast, like the 8:30 kickoff that like most people are used to is ideal for the Pac-12.
Yes.
Although I love Pac-12 after dark. Diehards don't, or non-diehards don't.
I do too. I love football played under the lights. I'm not a big fan of playing daytime, but just the look, the feel. I think we can all agree it's just better to play at nighttime. For the ACC, I have Tyler Van Dyke, my number one, Sam Hartman, number two. That their version Wake Forest of the RPO offense is very different from anybody else. It's more of like a halfback draw. RPO is the best way I can kind of describe it. And then my third, I'm gonna go to controversial pick. I'll take DJ Uyagalele. Obviously a horrific 2021, to say the least. But I don't think you don't put the numbers that he did in his appearances in 2020 by accident. I also think Tony Elliott was a big reason for his drop off, and now Tony Elliott is gone to Virginia. I think DJ is set for a resurgent year. I think he was made promises of being a starter. That's why the other backup quarterback transferred out. I don't see the guy that from originals from Clemson, transferred Northwestern, transferred back. I think it's like Hunter something. I forget his name. I don't think he has a shot of being a starter at Clemson. And if a guy like Dabo Sweeney is going to stick with DJ Uiagalelei, there's a reason why. I'm just betting on Dabo for that pick. I think he could have a bounce back year. And my honorable mention is Brennan Armstrong from Virginia. I will have to watch more film on Jerkovich from Boston College because I trust whatever Greg says. He's a very knowledgeable voice. So I'll add him to my honorable mentions as well. But that's for my ACC. When it comes to the Pac-12, like you, Jackson, I have Caleb Williams, number one. Without a doubt, best quarterback in the best team with the best system. With the best weapons. Number two, I have Cam Ward out of Washington State. Really good quarterback in a very good system for him. And number three, Cam Rising out of Utah. I was very impressed with what he did, not only for Utah, but in the Pac-12 championship and also the Rose Bowl, which unfortunately Utah lost in an absolute phenomenal game against Ohio State. He's not a guy that's gonna let it late. But he's a guy that's not gonna, in my opinion, not gonna lose you games either. He's consistent, right? And he's not gonna throw those weird balls, those random picks. And he can put up some numbers too. So I have them for my 1, 2, and 3. And for my honorable mention, I have Michael Penix Jr. headed from Indiana up to Washington. They had a very good 2020 season with Indiana. Indiana in general wasn't good in 2021. He's going to Washington to play with Caleb DeBoer. And I just think that what Kalen DeBoer has done at his time at Fresno State and what Penix can do physically, I think it's going to be a match made in heaven. Kicking it out to you, Greg. Who's your top three for the Pac-12?
Well, since Caleb isn't going to be going into the draft, I'm not putting him on the list. I'm going to go with Tanner McKee, Cam Rising, as you said, Cam Ward. My honorable mention guy would be Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA.
Yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, obviously Bishop Gorman grad. I believe this is his fifth year in Westwood. So he's been under that Chip Kelly system for a long time. Arm is sometimes question mark, makes good reads off Chip Kelly system, but athletically.
He's Bailey Zappi at a bigger school.
That is a phenomenal comparison. Yeah, and again, he's going to be a veteran in that Chip Kelly system. Obviously, they did lose Kyle Phillips, so a weapon, and Greg Dulcich, so two weapons that are not there anymore. But it's Chip Kelly. He'll find somebody else knowing him. And the fact that, unlike majority of these quarterbacks in the Pac-12, he's going to have multiple years repetition in the same system. Obviously, Caleb Williams, only his second year in college football. Penix Jr. is a transfer. Ward is a transfer. Cam Rising, this is his second year in Utah. Is that correct? Or is it third?
Yep.
Right. And then Jay Delora at Arizona. This is his first year. What's his name? Emory Jones, his first year at Arizona State. So a lot is going good for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Let's go to the Big Ten. I think we can both agree. All of us, CJ Stroud is clear number one. Nothing even close to him. Second, I'm gonna go with a transfer quarterback. Casey Thompson from Texas headed up to Nebraska. Last year, Nebraska was the greatest 3-9 team in NCAA history. I quote Will Compton when he said this: the reason why Nebraska was so bad was because of special teams. like, oh, my goodness, that special team, they're the Green Bay Packers of college football in terms of special teams. The amount of games they lost because of them is honestly unbelievable. Casey Thompson is a good dual threat quarterback. He's not going to set the world alight, but he can make the passes where he needs to, and his mobility is very underrated. He's joining a system with Scott Frost where he's going to ask you to do a bunch of different things. I think Nebraska is a program possibly on the rise again. And I just think that he's in a position to thrive, especially when you consider the rest of the Big Ten. I think is good, besides Ohio State, is going to see kind of a regression as throughout the programs. My third pick is a controversial one, per usual with me. Graham Mertz out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's highest ever graded recruit, had a excellent 2020 season. I think in his first game against Illinois, he threw 4 touchdowns. 2021, oh my goodness, it was bad. Just check out the game against Notre Dame. That was Pick City for the Fighting Irish and defensive coordinator, now head coach, Marcus Freeman. I think Graham Mertz is going to be able to have a bounce back year. I think Wisconsin also, per usual, has a great running back room as well that he can rely on. I think that having that kind of a bad year had made him refocus. And if Wisconsin can put it together offensively, Paul Chris, I think, has a good system up there. And if they can go to the Rose Bowl with a guy like Jack Cohn, no disrespect to Jack Cohn, I think a person with Mertz's tools can rebound without a doubt. My honorable mention, I got 2. Sean Clifford from Penn State. My only argument for him is that look at Penn State with Sean Clifford, look at Penn State without him. 2 completely separate teams. And my last one is Taulia Tagovailoa at Maryland. Maryland is another program on the rise. Ended the season, I think, 6-6 with a dominant victory in the Pinstripe Bowl over Virginia Tech. Taulia is engineering kind of a revolution down in Maryland, and I just love his abilities. Gonna kick it back to you, Greg. Who are you taking for your top 3 quarterbacks in the Big Ten?
Well, you have to give it to at the top, just based on last year. However, does Ohio State actually have a hangover from what happened to them last year? Is there going to be a hangover?
Personally, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But if it does happen, it's going to happen week 1 against my Fighting Irish from Notre Dame. So I'm hoping for it. Now, with that said, if CJ Stroud doesn't have a great season, there's a guy in Purdue that is a quarterback, and I mean a quarterback, from the word go, Aiden O'Connell. He is, if Stroud wasn't in the Big Ten, Purdue would be a very dangerous second team as far as I'm concerned right now. Even without David Bell. That's how good Aiden O'Connell is as a quarterback. And my third guy, only because of his experience, he's going to be relied upon to be more of a passer this year without Kenneth Walker III. It's Peyton Thorne at Michigan State.
Peyton Thorne at Michigan State. Yes, definitely a big year for him to see what can he do without a first round graded running back like Kenneth Walker. So talking about O'Connell at Purdue, he has some great coaches at that program. Obviously, head coach Jeff Brom, who is notorious for his XFL after getting absolutely whacked and concussed, was back on the sidelines probably a quarter later, cheering on his team, and the next week made the famous quote, do I or do I not have a do I not have a pulse? Yes, I do. Is this or this is not the XFL? Yes, it is. Let's play football, which is one of the most badass quotes in the football history. And obviously his brother, absolute record breaker at Louisville. Brett Brom. He's quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator as well. So a lot going on for the Boilermakers. Peyton Thorne, that's an interesting choice. Mel Tucker has justified every single dollar down to the cent of his $100-something million contract. But I'm not that big on Thorne. I think he's like a better version of like Steven Petrus from Iowa. Is that his first name, Steven? Whatever. But his lack of mobility really scares me. A division that always has dominant edge rushers. But of course, only time will tell when it comes to that question about the Ohio State hangover, I say no.
Two against the Spartans last year, by the way. How did those two great top edge rushers do against the Spartans last year? What was scoring that Spartans game? That school up north? The one they wear those ugly yellow coward stripes on their helmet?
You're talking to the Big Ten champions, Michigan Wolverines. All right, but yes, they did lose to Michigan State. But also Kenneth Walker had a whale of a game that day.
That's right.
I want to give Kenneth Walker his flowers. That's why I had him so high. My goodness, what a performance! I mean, it's very rare to see a team attempt a double-digit comeback by running the ball, and that just shows you how effective Kenneth Walker is. And
he was the most impactful player to his team's success in college football last year. Period.
No doubt.
Of course, we just focus on the quarterback. Oh.
I know. Yeah. What really opened up my eyes to Kenneth Walker was that game down in Miami. It was an early morning game, right? Miami was in this weird kind of position, and Walker, when you talk about a dominant performance, that was it. And that's why I've been a fan of his ever since. But going back to the school up north, a team that I love a lot, the Michigan Wolverines, the reason why I don't think Ohio State will have a hangover is because they're going to play the video of Aiden Hutchinson at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, talking trash with Desmond Howard about Ohio State, and they're going to come out firing.
Make no mistake, by the end of November, 2 days after Thanksgiving, when they play each other again, the Ohio State Buckeyes will destroy the Wolverines. I mean, they are going to come out to destroy them. It's going to be pretty.
No, it will be a massacre.
Like 61 points time.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking back to those Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins, performances, the points that they would put up. I guess there's no doubt. They're coming, and also Ohio State has a great running game behind Travion Henderson as well. So that's why I'm not too worried about Ohio State having a hangover, because one, they lost a big game and Michigan basically talk trash about it like they've been winning, and also they can attack you in a whole bunch of ways.
On the Buckeyes offense, I still have questions on their defense at this point. That's why I say, is there a hangover? If it's going to show up, it's going to show up on that defense too, because that defense got pounded more than once last year, right? They got pounded by Oregon. They got pounded by Michigan. They need to step it up this year in a big way.
No, I completely agree with you. That Oregon game, they were 14-point favorites. Ohio State was, and when it comes to and Kayvon Thibodeau was out that game too. Just to add of what Oregon did that day, their run game, Anthony Brown and the boys were impressive. Then you look at the Michigan game. Literally, all Michigan did was hand the ball off to Hassan Haskins on a pull, and he was getting like 8-10 yards a carry, and that's not even an over exaggeration. Which is crazy to think about how Kenneth Walker didn't have a whale of a game that day. So,
he is a one-directional, one-speed running back. He doesn't have versatility at the wazoo or anything. He's got one speed and he's got one direction, and they killed him.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the reason why against Georgia nothing occurred, right? Because that's exactly what he is, whether people want to admit it or not. That's why I was surprised how Ohio State absolutely destroyed Michigan State the way they did. Because I was expecting Walker down a big game considering, but it just wasn't meant to be that day. But I agree with you, definitely the Achilles heel for the Buckeyes is their defense. Now it's time to talk trash, because of course I totally forgot you are a Notre Dame fan, a team I absolutely despise because of the 2008 Hawaii Bowl. With that being said,
what? People have so much hate.
First of all, as a Cowboys fan that you are, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are the Dallas Cowboys of college football, and we all know it. the greatness was back in the day. All right, everyone thinks you guys are going to the playoffs.
Everybody hates the teams that I cheer for, because I'm a Lakers fan in basketball, and we get all kinds of hate for that too. So I'm used to it. But the Cowboys and Notre Dame are the two biggest brands in the game of football worldwide.
Without a doubt. I mean, Notre Dame is the only Division I program to.
They don't make movies about that bunghole place up there up north.
Oh,
This
Lord.
city is about South Bend, Indiana. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, okay. Of course, he's referring to Newt Rockney, All-American back in the 40s, and of course, the great Rudy, touching of the heart. But you know where they don't touch? The national championship picture. That's where Notre Dame doesn't touch, and that's not changing anytime soon.
The whole system is so messed up. I want grade point average to matter. Then we'll win again. You'll never see Alabama. You'll never hear from them again. If we get back to being student athletes, there's not a team down south that'll ever win another national title because they all carry 2.2 grade point averages. Okay.
You know what's a number I really like? Dollars. And you know who has the dollars? The SEC. I agree with you. Notre Dame. Well, here we go. That's your thing.
They have the money. The only thing that Notre Dame can't do, we can't get the top end corners in the country, and we can't get a 5-star quarterback. If Notre Dame got those two things, look out. Look out. But they just can't do it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, let's look back at when Everett Golston was the Notre Dame quarterback, the true dual threat quarterback of that time before, obviously, Zaire and what's his name? He played for beside the point. Everett Golston, I thought was a dude that was going to win you guys the national championship. I mean, that team in 2012, I believe, was absolutely phenomenal. Obviously led by Matt Tateo on defense.
We didn't have the back end on defense. So, if you can't get those guys, that's what holds the Irish back, is those two spots. Is getting a 5-star at quarterback, getting 5-star corners to come to Notre Dame. If they got the cornerbacks coming to Notre Dame that were 5 stars, that's a scary, scary thought with what they do at every other level of the game.
Yes, you are absolutely right. But they might, if Marcus Freeman can call up the right people, a lot of these top programs in the West Coast, like California, for such, are private universities. So the grade points averages are there. St. John Bosco, Marde.
Much like that place up north, they focus on that. Stanford, USC. That's why I respect it, as even though we finally, after 94 years, didn't play them thanks to that damn pandemic. I do not hate the Trojans because of the same reason. It's a student athlete. And that S word comes first. But in this day and age, it's now totally history because we're in the NIL and all this other stuff. So it's all gone.
No, you're absolutely right. It's the belly of the beast. It sucks for Notre Dame fans because throughout the years, even during the Brian Kelly tenure, you guys have had great rosters. But again, those crucial positions, you guys just didn't have the players.
Spots, the one on offense and that back end. You give them shutdown corners, high-end corners, and Notre Dame has a shot against anybody at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, throughout the time I've watched Notre Dame, you guys have had great running backs, phenomenal offensive linemen, great tight ends, really good receivers. D-line was always solid, good linebackers. You're right, it's just two position groups that have been the detriment of the Fighting Irish, and they will be come Ohio State at the start of the 2022 season. Marcus Freeman can scheme however he likes, but at the end of the day, talent beats talent.
I was joking earlier, but I'm not holding out that much hope. I'm realistic when it comes to it,
That's fair, but I do want to mention before we move on that I have been a big fan of Marcus Freeman for a very long time, and I have been a hater of Brian Kelly for an even longer time. And I think Kelly.
I wasn't a huge Kelly guy. I know for a fact that he lost program recruits because of the way he actually treats recruits. He's not a nice person. Bottom line. Freeman is the real deal.
Absolutely. I just remember hearing how Kyle Hamilton spoke about Marcus Freeman, how relatable he was. And I think Freeman is going to be a great asset to the program. Alongside your point about Brian Kelly, don't know why LSU would want to recruit him. They're getting no players from the South ever again while he's there. And secondly, to your point of he's not that good of a person, NFL head coaches Matt LaFleur and also Robert Saleh were GAs under Kelly at Central Michigan. They were invited to his house, Kelly's house, for a Christmas party, all the coaches and everything. And instead of coming inside, Kelly made them park cars. So that just shows you the kind of guy Brian Kelly is, which makes me question why LSU would ever sign him, and also to the contract that they did. Holy moly, that's a lot of money. But that's neither here nor there. We can talk about our Notre Dame hate all day long if we want to. Our Notre Dame love, of course, for Greg. But let's move on to the Big 12 in terms of quarterbacks. Obviously, Jackson had Dylan Gabriel number one. I have Dylan Gabriel number one as well. I have Spencer Sanders out of Oklahoma State at number two. I think he should be number one if his head coach wasn't Mike Gundy. I think Mike Gundy has plateaued as a head coach. And Oklahoma State will never sniff the national title picture ever again. They had it once at Brandon Whedon, and they blew it to Iowa State. But that's beside the point. And third is the rookie, because he's been getting paid like an NFL rookie, Quinn Ewers at Texas. I think he do a lot of things with the roster that Sarkisian has assembled, and obviously he still has big, bad Bijan Robinson in his backfield to supplement him as well. Greg, who are you taking?
Well, I'm going to take the three transfer guys because we got three of them. Adrian Martinez from that 3-9 Nebraska, he's at K-State now. Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma from UCF, and the last of the big transfer portal guys from the University of Georgia before he lost the job at West Virginia, JT Daniels.
Great list. I wonder if JT Daniels regrets reclassifying from high school, considering how his collegiate career turns out. Kids, sometimes it's not great to leave early. However, at NIL it might be if you're getting that $1.1 million check like Quinn Ewers did.
I would have put Quinn on there, except I still don't trust the Longhorns program.
Fair. I understand. And I remember when Charlie Strong was the head coach at the University of Texas, and Texas was playing number 10 Notre Dame in Austin, and Texas won, I believe, on a Tyrone Swoops running touchdown in overtime to the great call, Texas is back. And were they? No. And then Sam Hillier won the Sugar Bowl and said, we're back. And were they? No. Good times. But great list. Adrian Martinez definitely fits the mold of what Kansas State is trying to do. Their program definitely on the rise, which was surprising because I thought they would go to the toilet after Bill Snyder left the second time. But they have definitely been impressive. And I think they have one of the best jerseys in college football, or best uniform in college football. That purple is absolutely slick. Great list. Let's finish it off with the SEC, aka where the money's at. Number one for me, Bryce Young. Number two is going to be Will Levis. However, that can change depending on how that offensive system for Kentucky operates in 2022. And number three is a controversial pick. I'm taking Hendon Hooker out of the University of Tennessee. He's going to be his third season in Josh Heupel's offensive system, an offensive system that puts up a lot of points and operates very fast. He's playing in the weaker conference or the weaker division of the SEC. And also the fact that Tennessee's a program on the rise. They've had a lot of really good talent wide receiver come through the years. Obviously, Josh Palmer, and then Velus Jones Jr. was the big name last year, Mr. 26-year-old. Old man Joe Jr. But Hype was a guy that can recruit very well. They have a lot of talent at Tennessee. And he doesn't need a great O-line, personally, because the ball can come out very fast in that offense. He just needs one that's good enough. The only thing I have against him is he tries to go for the deep ball way too many times. If he could check down more times than not, I think he would be a first-round selection in the NFL. If he can do that this year, I think he could rise up. So that's my top three. I have two honorable mentions. One is Max Johnson, transfer from LSU to NIL Capital, Texas A&M. Obviously, genetics, his dad's Super Bowl champion, Brad Johnson. Left-hander, so definitely gives defenses different looks. And he has had some fairly impressive performances throughout his time at LSU. Obviously, the upset of Florida, which I know hurt Jackson's good heart, And then, obviously, Texas A&M last year. And a fairly decent game considering he had nobody to throw to against Alabama in 2021. The other honorable mention is Jaden Daniels, transfer from Arizona State to LSU. I like him as well. He's not the most accurate passer in the world. I think he does have great ability with his legs, and the fact that he had no weapons during his last year at Arizona State University. He's shown that he can win big games before. I think if he can put it together, and probably more importantly, if Brian Kelly, gets fired and they can bring a new coach, he can probably be a great quarterback. But those are my three for the SEC. Greg, who are you taking?
Well, I got John on there, obviously. My other two quarterbacks, though, being a former Arkansan, I'm going to show my bias for having lived there in Woo Pig Soo Wee. KJ Jefferson, who had an awesome spring. People forget, despite their losses last year, KJ was 21 touchdowns, four INT. That's it. He doesn't have the one receiver to focus on now. He's going to have the ability to spread it out and not try to force anything to the one guy with his trail on burst, right? He looked really good in spring, and KJ also put up 600 yards of rushing last year too. Pretty good year for his first season. The other guy is going to be even more controversial, but this is the guy who he's already got a national championship. That's Bennett.
Wow.
And because Stetson Bennett is a game manager. You don't need to be the biggest arm. You don't need to be the most accurate. If you just make the plays when you need them the most, guess what? Right?
Wow, Stetson Bennett. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's coming back, obviously, off a national championship season, and he has big Lad McConkey to throw to. He's a guy that won't lose you games. He won't win you games, in my opinion, either. But Georgia needs a guy like him. Of course, having a game changer would be better, but it's much better to have a guy like Stetson than a guy that puts the ball in the air that can be thrown. Defenders can take it out of his hands. Bennett is a guy that he throws the ball away when there's nobody there. He dumps it off if nobody's open deep. He makes smart decisions. So I don't think that's that controversial of a pick as well, considering the guys that I said do those other things. They do make the questionable throws, questionable decisions. They do put their body on the line when it's not necessary.
Again, and those guys that you're talking about are also on the programs that aren't as at the SEC, right?
Exactly. And if I'm not mistaken, Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, is still at Georgia, so he does have that stability as well. Yeah.
And from what I've basically been told, this Georgia offense will be a better, more diversified offense than they were last year. So that's what I'm going by.
Yeah.
As far as
So that is an interesting pick, but I don't think that's as surprising as some people might expect when they first hear it. When you start looking at what he's done and what he has surrounding him. KJ Jefferson is a guy I like a lot. I want to shout out Sam Pittman real quick. When Bob Petrino left, I didn't think Arkansas would ever be good again. I didn't think they'd make another bowl game, honestly, after Bobby Petrino left. And Sam Pittman has come in and absolutely done a phenomenal job with the Razorbacks. Obviously, I believe they participated in the Citrus Bowl last year against Penn State, a game which they won. They did like the Texas Foursome. They beat Rice, the University of Texas, Texas A&M, and was it somebody else or was it just those three?
Came really close with Alabama, but couldn't pull it off.
Yeah. And they were in Tuscaloosa for that game too.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were ranked at I think up to 8th in the nation at one point before they had that really bad loss to Georgia, well, the national champions. But they recovered to have a phenomenal season. KJ Jefferson is built. When you talk about his body, he is a strong man. He kind of reminds me of Khalil Tate, but bigger and better. Because he can run through people, he can run around people, he can put the ball where it needs to be. Not the most accurate dude all the time, but he's fairly accurate considering he's almost kind of like a shorter Cam Newton to an extent in terms of his play style and build, in my opinion, because he can run up the middle and get you that touchdown on the goal line as well. Many great games out of here, and they were a 2-point conversion away from upsetting Ole Miss on the road last season as well. So definitely not a controversial pick like KJ Jefferson at all. And I'm really excited to see where the Razorback program is in the next 5 to 7 years, because my goodness, Sam Pittman and Kendall Briles, they got something rolling. And Mark Odom, I think he's still the defense coordinator there, Mark Odom as well. But sorry,
Been this excited for them since I used to live there and they were in the old Southwest Conference.
yeah, great. And I would like to add that the stadium they play in up in Fayetteville is one of the nicest stadiums in college football, and it's still cool. They play at Memorial Stadium in Little Rock. Kendall Briles is a guy who's
It's not a bad stadium either. War Memorial is a really, really nice stadium, especially to watch a game from the stands. I hit annually for many years. But yeah, going up to Fayetteville, that's one of the most underrated campuses in the country.
beautiful.
It is, yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
And back to what I was saying about Kendall Briles still being there, obviously is that art, great offensive mind. Let's not talk about his off the field stuff, because that he's going to go in a very bad direction. But of course, Kendall has that influence, and Kate Jefferson could light up the SEC come 2022. Moving on to our next topic. I know we talked a lot about the Power Five. Let's go to the non-Power Five schools. Who do you think, who are the 5 quarterbacks that you think have pro potential? I'll start it off first with my 5. 2 names that we've already mentioned so far: Jake Hader and Grayson McCall. Great quarterbacks. I also got the Logan from Logan, Utah, Logan Bonner out of Utah State. Phenomenal season in 2021 that ended with both a bowl victory over Oregon State and also the Mountain West Championship against an SDSU team which was rolling everybody. He balled out in that game. Clayton Tune out of Houston, disciple from oh my goodness, what's his name? The old West Virginia, Dana Holgerson. So I was very skeptical after his 2020 season. Really brought the fire in 2021. I expect a big 2022 season out of him. And the last one is Tanner Mordecai, the old the old Oklahoma quarterback. I believe still at SMU. They do have Rhett Lashley, the offensive coordinator from Miami, as the new head coach now, as Slade Dykes had moved on to TCU. He's a guy that I think he's not going to be a game changer, but he's a dude that has ability to go into the NFL, be a solid backup, be like a Chase Daniels could say for many, many years, have a nice 15, 16-year career, get your $4 million every season, and just and a career playing 40 snaps and end up with $40 million. So those are my 5. I'm gonna kick it to you, Jackson. I know you haven't talked in a while. Who are your 5?
Oh, you're good. I'll go with I've got the same first 2: Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina, Jake Hader from Fresno State. For my next 3, I'm gonna go with Cade Rice, a guy that I kind of was on my radar a little bit. I think he's on the younger end. When we covered some SCS or FCS stuff on hardware, he's transferred from South Dakota State, obviously one of the more successful FCS programs, to Wofford, actually. So if you keep up with Wofford football, definitely a name to keep an eye on in Cade Rice. I've got Lucas Johnson, who's actually going into his 7th year, transferring to Montana from San Diego State. And then I can't list any FCS guys or group of 5 without giving some love to the HBCUs. So gonna give Jaron Williams, the transfer to Alabama A&M, came from South Florida. Obviously didn't have the most success there, but like some of the stuff that Williams does, I'm excited to see what he does at Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M hopefully to build off some success that they had, especially with Ezra Gray. So we'll see with that. But yeah, so that, I mean, there are lots of good guys, but those are just some of my favorites on there.
Great list. I know that if Bill was here, he would have a smile from ear to ear when you mentioned Alabama A&M. Williams, he also started his career at Miami, right? And started as a freshman before transferring to USF. Is that true?
Yep, he's on his 3rd school.
Yeah. So definitely has a lot of experience going to Alabama A&M. Greg, who's your top 5?
I've got McCall, I've got Hainer, I've got Mordecai, I've got Tune on my list, but 2 guys that you guys haven't talked about, Boise State, Hank Backmeyer, And at Troy, Gunnar Watson.
Great list. It has been a marathon with you guys. We are on to our final question of the night. What quarterbacks are most likely to improve their careers via the transfer portal? That's either players who have already transferred this previous offseason and will be starting at their new home, or players that you think should transfer next season and they could have an impact come the 2023 season. I'll kick it off with a couple. First one is Emory Jones out of Florida. Obviously, Jackson knows a lot about Emory. He was Dan Mullen's first ever recruit when he became a head coach of the Gators, I believe. Jones had a very tumultuous collegiate career, to say the least. Obviously, he was eclipsed. He didn't even start. Felipe Franks was a starter. Then he was eclipsed by Kyle Trask. And then when he was finally given the reins, Anthony Richardson came in, and it just has been a rocky boat ever since. To kind of describe the lack of care I believe Florida has had on him, he was announced that he was transferring anyway before Florida's bowl game against UCF, and they still started him because they literally had nowhere else to go. I felt like. So I think he's gonna get a fresh start at ASU with Herm Edwards. The only issue is that their offensive coordinator came from the UNLV as Zach Hill had to resign. And that offensive coordinator, I can't remember his name, but he also came from Baylor as well, Matt Rule. I've heard some interesting things about him, to say the least. But if, with all due respect to UNLV, if they run that offense that they do, if he runs the same offense that he did at UNLV at ASU, I don't see Emory Jones having a lot of success. Emory Jones has a very specific skill set that's predicated on his legs. So if they can change it up and make his legs the emphasis on that offensive attack, I think he could have a really good resurgence in Arizona. The same guy is another Arizona. Oh, sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just going to say the thing with Emory Jones, it's not just his legs. He's really only comfortable with hitch routes and anything where the receiver is facing back towards the line of scrimmage, right? Which obviously is not that many routes. Didn't really hit guys in stride that well. Even when you would get a good post route or corner route or something like that, he would always want to lead them back so that, you know, the front numbers were facing him. And that's just not, it's a very limited route tree that he can throw. And I mean, he can do that deep, but it still has to be like facing him. So not ideal, to say the least. So if they can emphasize his legs and just find some sort of system, I don't know, that just emphasizes hitch routes, because he can do those really well. He is really comfortable with those, but in stride, anything beyond 5 yards, he just never really hit that well. So
Yeah.
Actual throws are not his forte.
No.
Nash, honestly, he's a perfect prototype for the Mario Cristobal offense. A lot of read option, a lot of RPOs, and a lot of throws that are not deep or outside the numbers. And the other guy that I have on my list is another Pac-12 guy, which is, of course, Caleb Williams. I don't think much needs to be said. I just think getting out of Oklahoma storm, I would say, because of he personally didn't do anything wrong. Just the whole thing that went down with Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley, and how Oklahoma is a very passionate fan base that's very invested in Oklahoma football. I think that was just not an environment that he was going to thrive in personally. I think going out to California, securing that NIL deal, just kind of having a lot taken off his plate, and so he can focus on football was definitely perfect for him. And he returns to an offensive system for which he can excel in and has a full offseason as a starter to grow in. The third one is another Pac-12 guy. It's an in-conference transfer, Jaden DeLora from Washington State going down to Arizona. Arizona's a program on the rise, considering the fact that they were absolute hot garbage last year and the year before, and I think the year before that as well. Obviously, Cam Ward was brought into Washington State. DeLora was a Nick Rolovich guy. Nick Rolovich got fired because he wouldn't take the vaccine as per Washington State's mandate. I think he's going down to a situation where he's allowed to fail because no one really has expectations in Arizona. He can throw the ball. He's very athletic. And I think just kind of having that spotlight away, whereas Washington State, in my opinion, is in a win now mode, whereas Arizona is, win when you can. I think DeLora can develop, also considering the fact that I think he's only a sophomore, because he did play his freshman year during the COVID year, but they got an additional year. So last year was his freshman year as well. Therefore, he's a sophomore now. And those are my three to start with. I'm going to kick it to you, Greg. Who do you think has benefited or could benefit from a move in the transfer portal?
Left USC, went to Pitt, Keaton Slovis. He's going to get an opportunity out in the ACC. Obviously, Ewers and Caleb as well would be the other biggest names. I think one of those two programs is going to have such a horrifying season. Either USC or Texas. That one of those two guys goes to a third school.
Wow. That is not as controversial as I think. I think it's going to be the man in orange, Quinn Ewers. And the reason why I say that is because one, USC has a much easier schedule than Texas, especially when Texas moves to the SEC. And I think the Steve Sarkisian experiment has already failed. No disrespect to the man. The man cannot coach when the going gets tough. I mean, they lost to Kansas for Christmas, for Christ's sake. The Oklahoma loss was ridiculous how bad it was. I mean, they're up 28-7 at the end of the first quarter, and then you lose. And not only do you lose, they were getting set up to kick the field goal, and they just want to run to get better yards. And he runs for I think Kenny Brooks runs for a touchdown. Like, the way they collapsed in that Oklahoma game, they couldn't recover. That could have beat Oklahoma State. They didn't. I think they were close against Baylor, but they couldn't. But Baylor ended up winning. You know, so many times. I just don't have that faith in Steve Sarkisian. I think I wrote an article about either USC or Texas that they should have hired Marcus Freeman. Again, I'm a big Marcus Freeman guy. Great for Notre Dame to get him, but I think Quinn Ewers definitely could be on the move. I don't know where he could go, but considering the fact that he already has a fair amount of cash in his bank account already, the possibilities are endless when it comes to putting himself in the best position to reach the NFL. USC, one, is in California, so the recruiting ground is just hot as any recruiting ground could be. They already have the NIL backing, and they play in a conference where they can essentially guarantee themselves a spot in the Pac-12 championship game every single season, especially now that the Pac-12 has gotten rid of their divisions, and now it's just the top two teams that are going to the championship game. That's why Oklahoma has been in the championship game for so many years, because they've been the best team, and they haven't had to play in the division. And even last year, if they were to beat Oklahoma State, they would have played Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. Wow, so I completely agree with you. I would kick it up to you, Jackson. Who do you think benefited from the transfer portal?
My first guy that I've got is Dylan Gabriel. More than anyone, I really liked what he did at UCF. I think it'll only improve at Oklahoma. Originally, I had Caleb Williams on this list, kind of looking at the question again of what quarterbacks are most likely to improve. How can you improve with Caleb Williams? I mean, this guy didn't start until halfway through and is still in the Heisman conversation. So that's going to be a tough act to beat. So I'm going to go with Spencer Rattler just because of how sour it ended there at Oklahoma, and how Rattler, like you mentioned earlier, the SEC East, obviously, I mean, it's the SEC, but it is the weaker side of it, right? Because once you get past Georgia, I mean, there's Florida and Kentucky maybe in that group next, and then after that's a pretty steep drop off. So I'm going to go with Spencer Rattler and Dylan Gabriel as my two guys.
Yeah, two great selections. Rattler, obviously, regrouping with Shane Beamer, a guy who's seen that Rattler was really close to during his time in Oklahoma. So now he gets to step away from that spotlight and rebuild both his play and his image that we talked about earlier. Dylan Gabriel, great pickup for Oklahoma. Not only is he going to run that Ole Miss style offense to success, he's also going to come into a program that really wants to win, you know, especially after everything went down with Lincoln Riley. So they're going to have his back without a doubt, even more than previous years. A program that has shown they can win with smaller quarterbacks, and he's playing a division where he doesn't have to face the big monsters on the D-line like he would in other conferences as well. Another thing I want to add to this list is a guy from USC, Jackson Dart, who transferred down to Ole Miss. I think he's going to definitely benefit from Lane Kiffin's system. there's not much more I can say to that until I actually see it played out. I just think that he had some flashes of really good play. I think the Washington State game is a game that sticks out for me. I think entering Kiffin's offensive system, he can do well as well. Greg, do you have another pick for the transfer portal?
Um, you know what? I think Adrian Martinez can really do himself a lot of good at K-State too. I really do. I think he's going to be in a much better place than what he was with that Cornhuskers outfit. I think he can just do himself a world of good going to K-State in a conference where offense is, king.
Definitely. And K State, Deuce Vaughn is one of the really underrated running backs, in my opinion, because of his size. But my goodness, that man can find the hole. And what he does, he is gone. Like, there is no doubt he has game changing speed. So I like the Adrian Martinez pick too. I'm going to go. My next guy I'm going to go with, I'm going to start going with guys that I think should enter the transfer portal. First guy I think is Sam Hard from Washington. Obviously, he has a great lineage. His father played at Washington. His uncle Brock Hard, I probably mispronouncing his name, had a really good career there. What's up?
Keyword.
Heward, thank you, Heward. Obviously, Washington was in a place of disrepair these past seasons under Jimmy Lake. And obviously, with killing DeBoer, there is potential, but he brought in Michael Penix Jr. for a reason. I think it's time for Heward to leave Washington, possibly even leave the Power Five and go rebuild his career somewhere where there's some stability. A place I'm looking at is like San Diego State. The only thing that San Diego State was missing last season was a quarterback. And I believe that they could be the next group of five team to make a New Year's Six game if they get a guy like him. Do you have a guy, Greg, that you think should potentially enter the transfer portal?
When I look at all of these teams, there's actually a ton of them that should enter the portal, right? There's just so many guys. A guy could get that injury in week 2 of this year, and the guy who comes in and replaces him stays there, right? So all of a sudden, where does this guy go, right? We see that. We saw JT Daniels get hurt. He had to leave Georgia, right? So there's so many of them that this could happen to. But if there's one guy, I still think it's going to end up being Quinn Ewers. I think he's going to end up going to that third school. I really do. And he better make the right choice, or he's just going to be considered, the number one high school quarterback and all this other sort of stuff that we've seen in the past, who doesn't get very far.
You're absolutely right. And the worst part about Texas is that from an offensive standpoint on paper, my goodness, do they have a lot of weapons. Obviously, Bijan Robinson. But they also have Keelan Robinson, Worthy, who the speedster, Whittington, the wide receiver. I believe they brought in Jamal Billingsley from Alabama as well. I think they also brought in Ajayi Hall from Alabama too. So there's a lot of really great talent. But again, I just don't think
they don't have a culture in Austin. It is the most overhyped program in the last decade that I thought. It is so overhyped.
No, you're right. The culture in Austin is let's win now, and if not, you're gone. And that's just not a way that you can build a program.
The culture in Austin that I'm talking about is the nightlife available in Austin, and yeah, it's got one hell of a nightlife. I think there's this. It's kind of like what I always bitch about with the facilities at Frisco and the country club culture that's created by giving them absolutely everything under the sun that's top of the line. They get comfortable just because they're Texas Longhorns, just like the Cowboys get comfortable being a Dallas Cowboy, right? If it was me, I'm taking a whole bunch of stuff away from you guys. I'm going to make you angry. I'm going to make you vicious. And that needs to happen at Tech because they do have the facilities and everything else. You go to that campus They've got everything at UT. I mean, everything. They got the boosters and all that other jazz that just pour the money into the program. But my whole problem is that because we're UT, we're going to win. No, you're not. You have to play the game, and you have to play hard, which they just don't do.
Wow, you hit that on the head, and I just want to add to that Dallas Cowboys point when obviously the great trio, Aikman, Irvin, Smith, when they came in, and obviously all the other guys too, the Cowboys were not good before then. The end of Tom Landry's reign was pretty poor at best, and the beginning of Jimmy Johnson's was not good either. And they had to work and crawl and scratch for those 3 Super Bowl wins. And now the Cowboy brand name is obviously you're a quarterback for the Cowboys, you get a broadcast deal anywhere in the country, and it's going to be a big one. So I just want to say that to add to your point. Jackson, do you have a quarterback you think should transfer as well?
I don't have one right now. I do want to say that I think there should be a window for the transfer portal, right? Like what we have in free agent, or excuse me, and like the trade window and the trade deadline, the NFL, where hey, from about halfway through the season until the beginning of the new league fiscal year, which is always in mid-March, we're not going to have any trades and no sudden jumps or anything like that. I really do like that idea, and we need some sort of idea like that in the transfer portal, because I get it. Maybe you go and see summer camp, and that's not quite enough. And in the beginning of fall, you realize, okay, this school's not for me. I need to get out of here. I need to transfer. I get it. We should have that. We shouldn't have it right before bowl season happens, because that's just a ridiculous thing to do. And then also, it just shouldn't be like right in the middle. I get in the middle of the season near the beginning, but like late in the season in the bowl window, we just need to eliminate that. And also give like a month or two afterward, like the NFL does, where it's like, okay, a month or two to process, a month or two to regroup, to where we're starting to focus on next year and you're start thinking about your future. So I'm just saying maybe end of October, a little bit before Halloween, to let's say March 1st, or around what the combine is now. No jumping in the transfer portal. That's all I'm saying. So
No, that's a very fair point. I'm going to take it a step further for you. I'm going to throw a suggestion out there that no announcement for the transfer portals can be made publicly until after the national championship game. And you can only transfer between after the national championship game, and the last day to enter the portal is signing day.
And we also need a legal tampering period where it's not such a gray area where the whole time, it's kind of like grayish. Am I allowed to talk to him? Am I not? All that. So
yeah, I'll give it a 4-week period.
Yeah, that's fair.
The last week in January, after the title has been decided, you can start to them. And then from February 1st to February 21st, you have to make a choice. And we're done. You have a 3-week window. We're done.
I like that.
I'm going to throw a curveball in there for both of you. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. If you enter the portal, right, and you end up transferring to another school, not transferring back to your school, right? So you got to go to a different school. You automatically get an extra year of eligibility. And the reason why I say that is because that's going to prevent players from playing the 4 games and then redshirting. And and it won't benefit the team they've already committed to, because if they return to that school, you don't get that redshirt. So if you transfer, you get an extra year of eligibility. I know you shook your head no. I want to get your thoughts, Greg.
My personal view on this whole transfer portal world that we're in now, and the reason why I shook my head no is I'm not a big fan of the portal as it is, because it's become overblown. We used to make everybody sit 1 year. That's why you didn't need the extra year of eligibility. You had to sit. Now, it's no longer the hardship case whatsoever that it used to be. Everybody is just wavered right on through to their next program because all we're talking about is the dollars. That's all that matters. So if that's the case, and they have the NIL to back them up now as well, I don't want to give them another year of extra eligibility. I want them do your thing, get your money in NIL, and get out. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And before I kick it to you, Jackson, get your thoughts, I just want to add this point real quick. The reason why I say that is because, one, the NCAA is a horrible organization. I want to start with that, which I think we can all agree on. And one of the things that about the transfer before the portal was the transfer of Tate Martell from Ohio State to Miami and how he was granted immediate access to play. Whereas another player, I forget his name, wanted to transfer closer to his hometown because his grandparent was sick and he wanted to spend more time with them. And he was denied instant eligibility. So I think because the NCAA has their foot up there behind per usual, that transfer portal is definitely a benefit. Also, it coaches leaving at random times to go get bigger, better jobs. That being said, that's why I think transfer portal was a benefit. The reason why I think they should get a second year is so they can play a full year of commitment with the team that they already committed to without having to redshirt or anything like that. And also the fact that it forces universities to give them an additional year of scholarship so they can continue their educational studies as well if they want to continue to play football, if the school wants them to play football. That way players can get, finish up their degrees and master's programs as well and, have just a little extra comfortability and also get another year of NIL benefit because as we all know, I think it's like 99% of NCAA athletes never make it to the pros. And even at the pros, it's like a 3-year average lifespan. So I just think it's a benefit for the players who work so hard and toil, especially in a game like football, where physically it is going to take its toll later on in life. And considering that these universities already don't offer post-playing insurance, things like that, it would just be a good benefit to guys leaving, changing schools. Jackson, do you have any thoughts about that idea? About obviously, you already mentioned that you like circuit window, but what about the added year of eligibility?
All I'm asking for is more transparency. Like that's all I'm asking for. Like if a guy doesn't get a year, if a guy's not immediately eligible, just be transparent about it. It's something the NCAA has done terrible. I'm convinced they're either trying to make the wrong decision or they're just flipping a coin. So that's all I ask for. That's a good idea, Brock, but I think we're light years away from making any sort of like intelligent critical thinking decision. So
because if we really break it all down now, because it's all just free agency, this is all it's become is free agency. Okay, so you guys are all free agents suddenly as soon as you want to be, whether that be after your freshman year or sophomore season, whatever. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to institute a high school damn draft. The 5 stars. I'm serious, the 5 stars. And I'm going to spread you all out all over the country. You're not all going to go to Bama. You're not all going to go to Georgia. You're going where we tell you to go that first year. Then I don't care if you transfer out of there after that. I really don't. But it's just so tied in to just the money. That's all it's become about. Money, 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 period. Right? It's to me, it's so diluted what college athletics is supposed to be. And it's the same thing in the basketball side. You have 1,600 kids in the transfer portal this year on the college basketball side. 1,600. There's only 64 guys that get picked in the NBA draft. So how the hell is 1,600 of them all transferring? It's crazy.
I think we can all agree that NIL was necessary for athletes because they do deserve a right to get compensated, especially with the high salaries that both university officials and coaches have been pulling in, alongside the fact that the transfer portal, gives players availability when coaches have been less than truthful during their recruiting pitches. I think we can also agree that the NCAA is now, and continues to be a useless organization, and its use in college athletics is essentially not there anymore. Had they instituted programs back in the day to allow guys to have funds, I think it'll all be different. But that's another conversation for another time. It's time to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming on. I know it's been a long episode. Before we go, Jackson, do you have anything you want to say to anybody watching?
Man, thank you guys. If you are willing to listen to this podcast in May about football, then you're definitely a football fan. Hopefully can appreciate everything we're talking about. So I appreciate you tuning in. If you've stayed with us this long. And man, it's never too early to talk 2023 class. Just a little plug that I found, Caddy's Cut-Ups. They have a Patreon page, have tons of all 22. They already have some stuff up for the 2023 class. And it's really easy to use, unlike NFL Game Pass, which is just an embezzling scheme, I think, because it's so useless. Their platform. It's through Google Sheets, and it's basically YouTube. So it's just really easy to use. I mean, I get nothing from it, but just a plug there, because I look for 2023 or 2022 draft film like for forever, and this is the only place I've found it. So Caddy's Cut-Ups on Patreon.
Make sure you guys check that out, especially, Jackson made a good point. If you're still here, you love football, so that's a great resource for you to get your inside scoops on the 2023 class. Greg, do you have anything to say before we head out?
I'm going to give the FCS guys my shout outs. Cam Miller, North Dakota State. Mark Gronkowski, South Dakota State. Tyler Riddle at East Tennessee State. Jason Shelley at Missouri State. And a guy at the FCS who plays the triple option that you expect from the academy. Xavier Shepard at Kennesaw State. He still managed 15 touchdown passes. Fun to watch. I mean, fun. Those are 5 guys that I just want to shout out in the FCS. Most of them, of course, are at the higher end of the FCS rankings going into this next season. And if you're talking about the draft and all that good sort of stuff, instead of what I did last year, which is basically, as the season went along, I started doing all of my film and all that good sort of stuff. I got to jump early. I've been watching the junior and sophomore seasons. I'm up to 155 guys right now that have already done for next year's draft.
Wow.
Yeah. And now for all those guys, it's basically just what I've already seen on film. Do they progress, right? Is there progression? Is there regression? And then I can go from the rest of them. Because this year I want to hit 500 guys for the draft instead of 400.
As we all know, Greg is the guy to go to and talk about recruits. And I know for a fact that he's coming for blood in the next year's ninth annual Macapalooza draft. So it's gonna be very fun to see Greg break everybody down.
I don't know who judged that. I really don't.
I think the judges were great. And the only reason I say it is because I won first place. But that's beside the point. And it wasn't my picks that won, it was my trades. But that's a story for a different time. And did I get heat for it in the group chat? You bet you. But that's all right. I want to shout out Bill Carroll and the group for giving me my $15 gift card for Uber. But that is beside the point. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Greg, for coming on. Just a reminder that Jackson has his own podcast that he hosts with a good friend of mine, Omar. Greg will be dropping his Memorial Day article talking about some of the great football players that served in the armed forces and some who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next episode will actually be with Bill Carroll. I know some of you guys really enjoy him and his plethora of information. But until then, we'll catch you guys next time.
Some of you, who's not enjoying Bill?
Good point. If you want a history about football in general, especially Black football and the pioneers in Black football, that's a guy that you definitely got to watch. Check out our old episode. But besides all that, for everybody watching, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.